Let me see here.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor.
Presentation for the proposed Okay. Let's start this meeting. It's 7 o'clock. Let's let me try that again. Let's start this meeting at 7 o'clock. Roll call, please.
DNA,
Here.
Casanello, just joined by Zoom. I'll make him in just a second. Pater,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Schneider,
Here.
Ramirez,
Here.
Gallagher.
Here.
Okay. Do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first agenda item, monthly financial report.
Good evening. This month's actuals. Is there any specific questions on them? I know we have a long evening today. We're going into the line items for the proposed budget, so I'm not sure if there's any specific questions on the current actuals of the current budget.
Anyone got any questions of changes? Here we go, finally got the packet. Doesn't look like there's anything out there, Roberto.
Okay.
So I guess we'll move on then. Next item is the resolution 2024-002 budget amendment.
That's correct. So the budget amendment that you see it's in front of you is due to the chief applying for a grant earlier this year. After we had already adopted the current budget, the chief was able to apply for this DCJS grant. He was awarded the grant. We have received the funds in the amount of $12,000. So now we just want to make sure we recognize it in our budget so he is able to spend the items for what the items are going to be used for, the monies are going to be used for. It's going to be in the office, the supplies, I believe, uniform and supplies. But in front of you is basically just to make it official, to go ahead and recognize it and adopt it into the existing budget. It does not, it's under the 1%. That's another reason why we did not hold a public hearing, because it falls within under the 1% threshold that would require a public hearing.
Any questions? I'd like to say good work, Chief. Love it when you bring money into town.
Thank you. No worries.
Okay, it's pretty much. Joe, you have a question?
Yeah, no, finance liaisons take no exception to the request as information. Hello, Mr. St. Baldrick.
What's up, Joe?
Looking good.
Yeah, okay.
I should have went out and did that. My hair's shorted, close to it anyways. Okay, so I guess this will be addressed in the meeting. We'll move on to the next item then, the ordinance, mobile food establishment.
Attached in the meeting agenda tonight, you'll find our clean and red line versions of the latest draft. So following some discussions at the council level and with Mr. Pastanello, he had asked us who the appeal body would be if one of the mobile food units was to be kicked out, and then they wanted to appeal it. So we reread through the language. We also looked at some neighboring jurisdictions again, and we ultimately decided that the way it was written, that we didn't need to allow them a opportunity to appeal it. We had given them plenty of opportunity to do right, follow the regulations, and stay within what our ordinance is proposing. So we modified it that the town manager shall suspend or revoke the business license and the mobile food establishment permit. They will be given proper notices of any wrongdoing. But again, we did remove out the appeal process, as this just was not a standard procedure in this type of business matter. So happy to answer any questions there. Otherwise, everything has stayed the same since the last viewing of the ordinance. If there are no additional questions, this will be the final draft of it. We will have a public hearing again on Monday night. That's because we previously had made substantial changes to the ordinance. We do invite any, any business owners or anybody affected by this to please come in and have public comment during that public hearing on Monday night at 7 p.m. And then afterwards, the council can discuss any comments they receive and take action appropriately.
I see Joe's hands up.
Unless somebody else has a question, I do have one question.
Looks like you're first on the line.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Emily, for that explanation. I appreciate that response. So just remind me then, somebody gets their mobile food establishment revoked. How long is that revocation good for, and what's the process to regain access?
So we didn't set, I can get back with you on the time limit of when they can reapply. What we did, though, is we at least gave them a 12-month period. If they had a certain number of violations within that period, then they would have their license revoked. But we did not say that they have to be out for a certain amount of time before they can reapply.
Is that possibly something you might want to think about? Does it make sense?
Certainly. Yeah.
It might. Public notice can't happen. So we could revisit this next week.
Can't we still alter it with public opinion afterwards?
Yes.
So, like, this is what we're putting out there, this is under advisement?
Yes.
That's what I
Yes.
think.
Is that the only point that you wanted to make, Joe?
Yes, that was it. I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. That was kind of my idea too, Joe. If we're not going to have any type of appellate process or any type of, escalation, it seems to me we need to kind of put guidelines in there on what our penalty period is, because I doubt it'll be perpetual, right? I mean, most likely it would be either for the full year, depending on how blatant the offense was, till the next application, or maybe like a 3-month slap on the hand period or something like that, right? Something to think about.
Okay.
So will this delay this again, or are we able to still take action next week if we make the change?
Well, we need to go through public announcement first.
So we would, more changes next week, and then we would wait for another month to,
Well, we can't do it until we let the public give comment on this, right? And it could probably be, what do we need, 3 weeks notice period for public? What's public?
I think you could vote on it that evening. I would find that.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, for advertisement and all that for the public
Oh,
meeting.
if you wanted to have another public hearing, you would have to
And that's what you were saying, right? You wanted a public hearing for this?
We have it.
We have a public hearing on
Monday.
night at 7 p.m.
Oh.
for this. So I was saying that we can hear public comment on Monday night, and then you guys could vote on it after that if you're ready, or you can push it if you need more time to talk about any comments that were made. I can verify that this modification, the addition of a period in which they could not reapply, I can verify that that's not a substantial change that would need to be re-noticed. We can also mention it on Monday night as well to say that our intentions are to include a section in here that says you cannot reapply within, let's just call it 12 months if you've been kicked out for any of the reasoning in the ordinance.
I mean, I'm fine with that. That's the direction. I feel like I would prefer to make a decision earlier rather than later, just because we're really upon season.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize we already put the public announcement out there already, so.
That was the intent of the question. So the intent is to revise this to include that before next Monday?
Yes.
Okay.
Which I'm assuming means that you guys will have something out on the website for the public to see. Okay. Any more comments on this topic? Okay, we'll move on. Draft proclamation for Child Abuse Awareness Month.
Every April, the Dominion Women's Club plants the little pinwheels out at the museum gardens in April being the Child Abuse Awareness Month. And for the past 3 or 4 years, we have done a proclamation for them, recognizing them doing this. I do have the draft proclamation at your desk, Mayor, for if you all are good with the language, that we go ahead and sign it tonight so that next Monday they'll be at the meeting and you can present that proclamation, signed proclamation to them.
Yep, and I'm assuming this is the standard proclamation we've used over the past few
It
years. So
is.
it's nothing
It
that
is.
we've really changed. It's kind of rock
Dates.
solid. So any comments from anybody? So yeah, I guess we'll just say as directed, print it out, and we'll sign it tonight. Okay. Nice shingle too. Okay, we'll start to print this or sign it. Joe, I guess you'll come in tomorrow and sign it, or send it out. Okay.
Bless you.
Okay. Then we'll move on. Architectural Review Board.
Thanks, everyone. Despite Kim's encouragement that we get out the packet last week, I had other commitments that delayed getting this to you, but we had 2 meetings at the ARB post the post the council decision to overturn the ARB denial. We did look at the conditions as part of that decision, which was including looking at salvaging materials for the possible inclusion of the construction and replacement pavilion. As sort of a lesson learned of the house demolition, where the ARB was sort of brought in at the tail end of the decision, and with policies and guidelines that would facilitate potential designs, we decided to go ahead and front end that for the council to consider as part of an RFP. Again, these are general recommendations and conceptual plans. We do have a structural architect or structural engineer on our ARB that was able to give some suggestions. Essentially, in terms of salvaging materials, the only materials on the structure would be the brackets. There's some decorative brackets that are on the front porch. Out here at the Whole Fish House, if you ever look at the brackets there, they were retained from the original brackets. So that's an architectural detail. The other one was the porch itself. The stone pylons that are with that was recommending keeping the porch, but tearing it down to just the porch and the pylons. Also, to the extent possible, retaining the chimneys as an architectural feature for the pavilion, and also the stone columns for the side porch. With that, the idea would be, or the suggestion would be, and we looked at this through some of the aerial photography, is the pavilion being generally the dimensions of the footprint of the original house minus the additions, so it would be the square. And then rebuilding the front and side porches to attach to that main square. And to create that visual interest as you look at it from the street, you would still be able to see some of the original, perhaps the most notable feature of the building is its front porch as you pass by. So the idea would be to reincorporate that. So you'd be in the pavilion, but then you have you could step into the former front porch if you wanted to sit on it, or you could step into the side porch, or sit by the fireplace if you wanted to. Of those elements, it seems, again, it would just take some careful salvaging as you were taking the building apart. But obviously the most challenging would be the retention of the chimney if it's able to. But the other elements are fairly sound from what we're able to establish. The porch is pretty sound. So the roof structure, and there's some guidance or some concepts we put in there. Roof structure, again, would sort of be a square structure, but you would bring in some of the gables and eaves and some other elements that you see now. If you look at the art at the photograph, there's a lot going on that roof. It'd be quite expensive to replicate that with a new roof. So the idea would be to keep a one-pitch roof, but then put the gables and dormers on there to replicate some of the original elements. For the cedar shake, there's cedar shake that's on the building now. The idea would be to incorporate that cedar shake with some of the eaves. That would be a part of the pavilion. Other discussions. So there was a question of whether or not the bathrooms would be built at the same time as the pavilion. There's probably some utility in doing it, either designing it together, but maybe moving it separately. And in the interim, the suggestion was to build some sort of screening around the porta-johns that would somewhat match or be compatible with the pavilion if it was to be delayed, the bathrooms being a delayed action later on. And then the next steps, if overall the ARB was encouraging, if the council can move forward on an RFP to start putting the basics of the design together. I think I mentioned earlier to the board, there's, in my mind, some utility in doing, not simultaneously, but having, as we're taking something down, the community is able to see something coming up. So as closely as possible, we could relate those two activities. I think would get the community excited about it. And then, obviously, once the RFP is done, is then take it formally back to the ARB for recommendation. Just another concept too was there's sort of a floating wall where if on your side of the fireplace is 2 windows. It's almost if there's a way to retain that architectural feature as sort of a wall that you could, the general idea is to make this a very architecturally interesting that pays homage. A lot of the buildings that were around this, especially on Blight Drive, were designed to match the homes. So the idea would be to replicate that now that the house is coming down with that and create this architectural interest. But the wall on either side of the chimney was that if you still wanted to sit as if you're still in the home, you'd have that element, but then you still have the openness of the pavilion. So that may take some follow-on design, maybe not part of the original design, but there were some ideas on trying to make it architecturally interesting. So on the 2 attachments or 3 attachments that you see, the first was just a general accounting illustrating how busy the current roof is. Busy is a planning term. Second sheet is looking at possible ways to recreate a simpler roof line. It may be hard to see, but you'll see the red columns are to be the posts that replicate the sort of the edges of the pavilion. The blue line that you see in this first drawing up here would sort of be the open or the gables that would have the cedar shake potentially. And then the bottom view and the adjacent view sort of tries to replicate if you were to take the additions down and be able to see through. It sort of gives you an idea of how this might work. Same with the last page, again, from the side of where the chimney would be, sort of conceptually, you'd be able to see through the pavilion from that angle. There is noticeably a cost that would be associated with this, but again, hoping to start the conversation early, hopefully get some momentum with an RFP and use these as sort of initial concepts. Would appreciate the council's support in moving this forward. And the ARB is, as before, is open to engaging the council if that would be helpful before we put any sort of proposal together.
Okay, Matt?
On the fireplace, salvage, do you envision that as being a working fireplace for somebody who rents it, or just an architectural
I
element?
think the intent was to keep the, that stonework is pretty unique to to the bungalow style.
Yep.
And the idea would be symbolic more than, I think we would want the liability of keeping it as a burning fireplace.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. And the other sort of unknown is the three sides are stone. Once you take the inside off, it's probably not stones. You might have to do some reconstruction of the inside once you take it down. So when the other house came down, or when their house was moved, obviously the idea originally was to try to move this chimney with it. And that just was not, the weight and the structural, the way it was time built, just couldn't do it. But since this would be staying in place, I think there's less or more of an opportunity to reincorporate it since you're not trying to move it.
Got it.
Anybody else with comments? Tracy Lynn?
On the RFP, would you be wanting not only construction, but alternative design?
Correct.
Concept?
I think we would want to do that too. Obviously, we're laymen, we're trying to interpret the best to our ability the guidelines and ordinances, but obviously a professional architect would probably have a more practical or be able to incorporate some of these elements in a more practical manner. So that would be would be the idea.
Yep, but we got to give them a path to design towards, right?
I mean, it's anticipating that question of an architect saying, well, what do you want? And say, well, let's start this as a basis for the conversation.
Yeah.
Right,
So-
right.
Mary?
I just want to say thank you to the ARB for going through this exercise. I appreciate them taking into consideration all of the ordinances and protocols, and then also their passion for retaining the history of it. Giving it a visual is nice for people to see. And I feel like the timing is well placed in the sense that having a vision moving forward before demolition starts is probably the best option. So I can understand why the ARB felt compelled to do this. Like I said, when we decided to appeal the ARB decision, I was worried that a pavilion would be a really long, distant goal. And so I hope that this does move it forward because we need to have this space utilized. And I really do hope that we can find a way to also ensure the restrooms are built at the same time. Like that's a major priority, at least for our community. I think that's the bare minimum we could do for them. So thank you.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I absolutely concur with the bathrooms being done at the same time. It could help alleviate some of the cost as well, as far as, yeah.
Yeah, Joe, did you have something? I saw you raising your hand.
Well, I'd like to hear from staff,
Okay.
their thoughts. I see a few concerns. I understand we want to replicate and honor, pay homage to it, and I would concur with that. I think that can be done. And one of the things I think that have to be established on the front end when you're doing this kind of work are establishing what the design criteria are. And that's going to be very important to getting something that everybody buys into. You know, I see a lot of peaks and valleys on that first one. That has me a little concerned, so I'm glad you did a second one. It's a little less complicated. I mean, I guess my question for staff is how do we go forward with some of these ideas, and how do we determine if they're cost prohibitive or not in developing that footprint? I mean, we've got a footprint, you know, I think we've talked about this in the past, right? We've got a footprint that we want to place this on and try to minimize our issues, I guess, with DEQ and other things. So how do we do that going forward?
So I think that's a good question, Joe. That's something that I was going to pose back to all of council is I have an RFP ready to post to demo the building. And based on the meeting I attended where we did a site visit with the ARB, I was under the impression that at that meeting we decided to save the decorative brackets from the front porch and then retain the stone pillars and the stone foundation. So If it's the council's wish to go forward with also retaining the stone fireplace and hearth, as well as the entirety of that wall, I need to make another revision to the RFP. I also need a council directive on, are you guys ready for me to post this RFP for a demolition, or do we need to have a further discussion about also having somebody designing the pavilion and really determining what's going to be saved and salvaged for architectural purposes or elements that we incorporate. Certainly I can take good pictures, but if we want a structure that mimics or mirrors it and then also has the same foundation footprint, I think this is something that we might need a pause on until we get another RFP ready for the design of the pavilion.
A couple things. One, the chimney was, I apologize that that wasn't conveyed to you, but the chimney was part of the, I think, part of the
Okay.
recommendation that came out of it. In terms of, Joe, the question about blue, the blue wasn't intended to be a design recommendation. The blue outline was just illustrating how busy the existing structure was. The intent wasn't to replicate that. In terms of cost, I do believe it's fair to make a metric or sort of look at that, but I do not want to immediately sort of tank the project on cost. If we at least have the alternatives or get some estimates of what that might be as part of the proposal, and sort of what we talked about earlier about having the alternatives as part of that as well, and some cost differentiation between it. So, and again, this was with an idea of trying to make it low cost as possible, trying to simply detract or pull the building off the front porch and the chimney was a lot less complicated than trying to salvage pieces of the building itself, either interior elements and stuff like that. So there was a cost consciousness to the ARB's discussion and decision to be able to minimize the cost and the technical nature of trying to salvage some of these things. So most of the original features on the house, we did ask, there's probably some people that want to come in and there's things such as architectural salvage, whether we want the liability or that or not, but there, you see all the shows online where people come in and harvest materials at their own risk. But a lot of that material is the rough sawn wood, and there's people that will pay money for that kind of stuff. Originals windows aren't original, and a lot of the brackets and other types of things, while they're unique, they're fairly utilitarian and not that particularly decorative. So, I guess, go ahead, sorry.
Wait till you're done. I got a nice punch list of things that I
Okay.
want to address, so.
So the thought with being and try to do them in tandem was you and I talked about, Emily, about just this is the current budget year that we need to execute this contract. But again, if there is a utility in timing them at least somewhat together, and maybe that can be part of the contract, is that they start no later than this date and finish no later than that date. What would be a shame is if that sits up there vacant again. We take a building down and we don't have a public space with which to use for a significantly delayed period of time, so.
And based on what the ARB is requesting council to approve for salvage, I am also concerned about the safety of taking a building down and leaving a wall and a chimney up. Our playground's right there, kids are already getting into the building, and our well house, so I have significant safety concerns about that. Not saying it's not doable, but I think that needs to be top of our priority in considering our timeline.
Yeah, I envision we'll probably have to put a fence around it. My punch list, I envision this pavilion having some high ceilings and open ceilings. So I don't know if the chimney can be salvaged and be workable as it is. We may need to just break it up and reuse the material if we want to rebuild it and put it in place. Because I'm looking at something like, 12 feet ceilings, something that leaves a nice big open space, but there's still environmental protections above, right? I think we'll probably have to get the architect in at the same time we look at maybe demolishing this, Emily, because if we want to try and salvage this porch, that's a discussion we got to have. Elevation will become a major factor in the design of this. I was just looking at replacing this with a slab, a level slab, or a little bit of a slope for drainage, of course, and then putting this on top. But if we go to that concept, I think we're going to have an architecture up front before this thing gets demolished. Another question is placement of the bathroom. Is it going to be attached to this, or are we going to have it as standalone? My thought is I'd prefer to have it standalone because that welcomes the whole park. If you attach it to it, people will think you got to rent the facility to use the facility. So those are kind of the concepts I had. I do have the same type of feel. We should put some of the elements in. The roof line is nice to put some of that in. Definitely the tapered stone pillars with the pillars. Those are the kind of concepts I was thinking of having. And then with the bathroom, you put the cedar shake in, and you put the tapered mullion windows and stuff like that. So.
Just to clarify too, to Emily's earlier point, the emphasis was on the porches and the pillars. The chimney was also a recommendation, but again, if that's quickly becomes unsurmountable, then that's fine. Harvesting, I think, of the stone makes a lot of sense, and they round it out. The porch, like you said, there was some thought of that too, that if you kept the level of the porch, as you see as you go behind it, the red there was sort of a depiction of what that patio might look. It would make it a little bit higher.
Right, but the only way we'll be for sure on an integrated design will be to get this architect up front.
Oh yeah, it would need to be level across the way to accommodate the porch.
So, Emily, I think my understanding, what I'm hearing everyone say is we're going towards, or at least Mayor and Councilman Schneider, that we're looking towards an architect RFP first? Is that what I'm
Probably in
hearing?
parallel. We got,
That's what I was going to ask.
I was going to say, it sounds like we need to have an RFP for an architect consultant because we know it's going to be over the spending limit, so we know we need to do a comparison. I wish we had had that discussion a couple months ago because Olan and I have it. I mean, I was ready to post it Friday. It's been a lot of hard work on this, so we can pivot and we can come up with an RFP for an architect to develop a plan for the pavilion. I think they need to come out and see the building while it's standing so that they can come to the council with what they propose, how they propose working in the design elements of the bathroom, and also do a utility investigation to figure out if it's going to go in tandem, how they can preserve the water utility and hook it up with the restrooms. But I also want to point out, Chief actually just sent me a note on this, that we need to also think of our event schedule. So the PD uses the park for National Night Out, and we also use it for Haymarket Day and the summer concert. So we have a lot of timelines I think that we need to work on lining up here.
Did Joe have a question?
Yeah, I did have a question for Emily. Seeing how long it took to do the design for the sidewalk, I'm curious, doing this kind of a pivot, what would be an estimate for the time that would set us back? Particularly my own opinion, and that's just me, I'm not really wedded to the idea. I mean, I get the concept of integrating the design and everything, but is that going to end up slowing us down given, how long it took to do just something like a sidewalk?
So to answer kind of quickly with a rough estimate here, and I'm just going to base it off of the trash RFP. So Roberto and I worked on a draft trash RFP with our town attorney. That took us probably 2 months to get a finalized document. We put it out for advertising for a month, and we're currently working on the review and awarding. So just to get out a RFP for architect consultants with everything we have going on currently, I would estimate a minimum of 4 months there. We can certainly try to expedite that in our workload. Once we select someone, I would say it's a rough estimate here, but I would say it would take them about 6 months to come up with a design and do all of their due diligence, look into the utilities, look into, talking to you guys. They're going to want to have several meetings with council or the board and have that discussion. So I would say we're at least 10 months down the road on getting a design from an architectural firm. And that would include, in that 6-month time frame, that would include us having to move pretty quick on reviewing everything, signing a contract, doing a quick kickoff, and then being very diligent in their work.
Tracy Lynn.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Could you, thank you, reverse that then with what we already have in place with the RFP for demolition and give us a timeline and what we would have to coordinate there?
The RFP for the demo, pretty quickly after you guys overturned the decision, we started working on that. It's ready to post. I just have to add the language of retaining the chimney, and if you guys direct me to add language to retain the entirety of the wall, I can make that quick edit and it can be posted this week. We would post it for a minimum of 30 days. We would select bids, go through that review process. We try to take our time and do about a month, do reference checks on that as well. Once that's awarded, then it would be a permitting process and they would have to work with our utility companies and Prince William County to get a building permit. I wouldn't want to rush that, so I would estimate it might take them 60 days to go through all of that permitting to get approval, and then they could probably have the building down in a quick amount of time. We would just have to figure out how to secure anything that's salvaged from the public. And I don't think long-term, if we're not ready to do something simultaneously, but we're salvaging the stonework and we're trying to leave the foundation intact, we need to think about the filling of the basement, or, we don't want to end up with a chain link fence around this for a long time. We don't want an empty pit. We can't have that. So we need to think through some of that as well.
So what I would like us not to do is just what you're saying, like rush to demo it just because the RFP is ready, and then have to put an ugly chain link fence there during our events, during, the use, like it sounds like it's going to be in the timeline of spring to fall, and there's going to be a lot of families out. I think that the timeline for the architectural RFP kind of lines it up better so that we're demoing it spring-ish and building from there. So I'm more comfortable taking that extra moment to make sure that we do this right and not leave like a huge liability sitting on the center of our park space. That's just my perspective.
Joe?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree that it would be a liability if we took the building down and we basically backfilled it like other properties have done, and you might not necessarily need a chain link fence around something that's properly graded and seeded for the time being until such time as we finish the design. But I want to go back to the idea of salvage and the ARB. What if we were just to salvage some of the material, some of the stone, and try to replicate that somehow or incorporate it into the design of something that is more, how shall I say, something that's simpler in its design? So in other words, we want alternatives, right? Everybody likes alternatives or options before making a decision. So we would have a small, medium, large, or whatever, however you want to qualify it, right? Like K-Car, Ford, Lincoln, different levels of investment or different complexities to the type of structure you want to build. So that's my thinking. I was of the opinion or thought that we were going to try to salvage some of the materials and not make it that complicated by having to incorporate sections of a structure into it. So that's my thought on the subject.
I have a question.
Feel free.
And please forgive me as I try to piece this together. Is there any reason as to why we couldn't move forward with the RFP for demolition and still work on an RFP for architecture? And then we go through, we get the contractor, we set the date for demo, correct? Like, would they give us a timeline?
In all the RFPs that I've read and looked at for examples, I don't think that we would want to award something and then ask them to wait until we're ready or wait 6 months. You know, they're putting in and they're expecting that in a timely manner, they're going to get that project and be able to move forward. If we could say in the RFP that, you know, we're going to work on this, it's going to be awarded, and a start date is X, and they know that it's going to be that far out in advance, that's one thing. But their numbers change so frequently, and then we would probably be looking at this happening in another fiscal year, so I think that's something we need to take into consideration as well. Because if they come back, if we award it and they come back to us with a big change order, you know, hey, the price of equipment for me to rent it, say they don't own it, the price for me to rent this equipment just went up 20 grand, we're kind of stuck if we've signed a contract.
Yep, and my staffing was good 6 months ago. Now my staffing sucks, so
I mean,
you're going to
it was a
have to wait
question to-
another 6
No,
months
a
for me
very,
to
a very
staff.
valid question, not to lose time on efforts that were already made, but I think tonight the biggest questions are if council can give final thought and directive on what you want to see salvaged and what you're in agreement with so that I can finalize the RFP for the demo. And if that sits for a little bit, that's fine, but let's just get that over the finish line. And then if we can talk through a directive on what our next timeline is, that would be very beneficial for staff prioritizing.
I was going to say, I feel like we have to decide what salvage is meaning for each of us. Like the definition is, you know, paying homage and utilizing some of those things for the design, but not necessarily keeping them exactly as they currently are. Correct?
Yes, and one last comment, and then Marchant, all you. Joe, to speak to your comment on liability and that we would grade everything, it would be graded properly. The way I understood it, and this is where I need clarification from the council, is that if we were to retain the stone pillar work and the chimney and a wall, then we really kind of want to retain it and how it's standing there and incorporate that? Or is the expectation that you tear it all down, stack it nicely somewhere, and build it back?
Okay, let's simplify this. I don't want to get this tanked over, you know, death by 1,000 cuts. The most interesting feature of that building arguably is the porch. Okay, the porch is a slab with pillars on it. You take the columns off, leave the pillars. It is a podium. You could sit people on it. You just take off the house, take down the chimney. If you go up there and see it, it literally is a square with a patio on it. I don't think there's a lot of risk of liability there other than the kids wanting to stand on the pillars. That, in my opinion, is something you take down to the patio. It's like a patio. You leave a patio without a roof on it. And then once we design it, hopefully they can bring that patio into it. The chimney, nice to have. Like I said, once you tear the wall off, it's not going to be all stone. To Joe's idea, let's take the stone off, stockpile the stone, put it to the side. So in the RFP, and I apologize, but the RFP had just the patio in it and the pillars. Okay, didn't mean to jettison the RFP. Let's not slow down the RFP. Let's harvest the stone from the chimney, put it off to a side where it's safe. Take it down to just the patio that I think should be easily incorporated back in. But guess what? Understand what I'm talking about? When you walk up there, it's a big stone slab with 4 pillars on it. That should not be a liability. A stone slab with some pillars on it should not present the same safety risk as a chimney that's unsecured for an indefinite period of time. We can recreate the chimney in the pavilion if we want to in the future. We can recreate the wall that is it, as long as we take pictures of it. We can make that as an afterthought. But I do not want to be sort of get lost in the weeds on this and have it delay. And then have the RFP go out as is, try to keep those as, and then be able to start or initiate the RFP on the design The only timing I would see is that as part of the contract for the design, that they get out there and take a professional assessment, pictures and dimensions of the, because if we want to recreate the patio eventually onto the pavilion, then we would need to know the proportions and everything else like that to replicate it. So Emily, how does that sound with an RFP for a architectural thing? Could it be part of that is that they get dimensions as part of it, or we hire someone to separately do the dimensions before it's brought down? What was that?
I think it's kind of up to council, kind of most accurately, if
Okay.
they can come out and see the building for themselves, but we can try to get dimensions or drone footage or something.
Not for us, but for the design of the pavilion, just to
Right.
understand the dimensions of it. To me, that would be part of the
Not
RFP.
video it.
Yeah.
No, we do that all the time.
I mean, there's groups, there's architectural groups that go out and know how to
Not-
do those surveys and those sorts of things. So I offer that as sort of a compromise to not slow down the RFP for the demolition, create a less liable situation to retain the one element. I think it's pretty remarkable. Over the whole house, to simply save a porch, I don't think should that be much of an effort. And then we can fill in the hole, seed it, do whatever. Still think the timing's going to be a problem if we have to come back out there and remobilize. But hopefully that'll make everyone happy and we can keep moving forward.
Alexander?
So Emily, if I understand correctly, if you do end up posting or releasing the RFP, you indicated that it might take about 4 months for that process, is that correct?
If we were to go through and draft one for the architect consultant, starting from scratch. I can post the demo one this week. I could post it tomorrow.
And how long does that take normally, the process?
We post it for 30 days. Sometimes we extend it to 45, depending on if we know we have a lot of interested candidates or we don't.
Okay.
So after the 30 days, they submit everything in, and then we usually take about a month to review everything and do our reference checks before we come up with a decision to award.
Okay, so total 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then after award, what timeline-wise?
So once we were to award it, we would hold a pre-construction or a pre-demolition kickoff meeting. We would make sure that we have our signed contracts and agreements in place, everything they need on our end. Paperwork-wise is done. Within a couple weeks' time, they would start applying for the necessary permits for the building department. And I would say that phase would take about another 60 days, just based on having to reach out to utility companies and show that utilities are disconnected and then get the appropriate permit approval from the county.
So basically what I'm trying to get at is from the first RFP for demolition to the architecture and then eventually to build the pavilion. What approximately, what are we talking about?
So I would say if you post the demolition for RFP, you can have the building down in, worst case scenario, 6 months. And while we're going through that phase, we can reach out and we can start going through an RFP phase for an architect to come in and do a design phase as well. Hopefully in that time, we can award a architect to come in and do the design of the pavilion. And then after that, once you guys agree to a design you like, then we'll need to go forward with an RFP for construction and then award a construction phase.
All right. And some of this question is in relation to the budget, right? Trying to figure out what we should expect in this coming fiscal year in terms of expenses associated with the park, right? That's why I'm asking some of these questions as well, so.
Absolutely.
I think from what I saw, I think there is a $75,000 architectural budget line item, I think, for the park.
That's correct. And that's using proffers from the Van Meter project that we have. That's a way of doing it. We can always use surplus, but right now that's what I'm presenting in the budget. But obviously we're going to have that discussion where council will, decide if that's how they want to go, if they want to suggest other ways of funding it.
And that's, okay, and that's the only line item associated with the,
So the thought was, when this budget was being worked on, the thought was that we were going ahead with the demo, nothing to do with what's being discussed right now.
okay.
So it's mainly to address the demo work. If you guys are looking to do the architectural design at the same time, that is a whole different ballgame that we can get into tonight.
Yep, and I'm assuming we would bleed the CIP line item for that.
Couple of options. One, we don't use the demolition by neglect monies very much. If we were not anticipating moving on any sort of remediation, that's one option I think we could probably take the money from, could we, for this project, or would that be not an appropriate?
I don't think it'd be appropriate in this case because we do have funds in that, and those funds have always been the intent to address,
Okay.
other buildings.
Based on some recent changes in our community as of last week, there might be an instance where we do need to act on that funding and secure a structure in town.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Based on events that happened in our community last week with the passing of a resident, there is a chance that we might need to act
Those
on that
monies?
funding and
Okay.
secure a structure.
Okay, and then the idea would be to use the money already allocated for the park today for the demolition, and then the proper dollars, we still have a couple hundred, I think, and that unallocated, but we would have to do a budget amendment if we wanted to use it before, or wanted to put those monies before July. So that would affect the negotiations we're having right now with the budget, so.
And I think what I saw is 50,000 for demo and 75 for architecture. I believe that's what I saw in the budget, but we can discuss that later.
Yeah, I was going to say, how about if we talk the money, on the money topic later? Let's just hit the design on this right now, or at least the moving forward, Mark.
Okay, since I brought it up, let's circle back. The understanding is RFP stays as is for just the porch. Don't touch the chimney, we'll let that go. Only thing with the chimney is, I don't know if there's a way to talk about salvaging the stone that's from it. Now, brackets we can take off on our own. Matt can go down and take those off, put them in the garage. That's not that big a deal. And then put that RFP out for that potentially. And then the other option would be to figure out how to initiate a RFP for measurements and design for a new pavilion. Okay, and then that would need a staff directive next week, I guess, at the meeting. So, okay, I can work with,
You can do it now.
You can do it now.
Yeah.
okay,
But we don't have to discuss again next week if you like.
okay. Is that helpful for you, staff?
So, any
Yes.
objectives, any objections to this game plan?
The only thing, Marchant, it's obvious that you're passionate about this, and I respect that you've put in a lot of time. As much as possible, I'll support this initiative, but I think if I'm not mistaken, when we passed the resolution to demo, I know you had a change you wanted to make to that resolution, and I think that change, if I'm not mistaken, did not entail this much of incorporating what currently exists, right? Even with that, again, I'm not sure at the end of the day what it will mean from a cost perspective, but, and again, I respect the fact that you were very passionate about this, but I'll,
No, I appreciate
I'm good
that.
with that.
To me, in salvaging the porch is just, you're not touching it. So as part of that, it's, you don't have to remove it, you don't have to do it. So to me, that's a cost savings versus having to pay labor to go in and pull the materials out. Appreciate the concession. I do take issue with the term people referring to me as being passionate, okay? I live in a world of ordinances and policies, and the frustration with the House is that I had expected we were going to give equal weight to all elements of it. This is my story in politics, okay? We have other factors, other people that are important. So to me, yes, there is a passion and an interest in it. I am frustrated I've been working in some capacity for the town for almost 20 years, and I get frustrated with the stumbling blocks we seem to stop on. So I'd like for us to see the momentum on this. I believe there is opportunity to meet everything that we need to consider. And if my passion's a part of it, that's great. But there are a comment about sort of, what's really salvage, what's necessary. We do have board policies and ordinances that backstop trying to balance all these elements and try to make a quality and attractive place to live that tells the town's history and tells the town's story. And if we're able to lead by example, I think, and there's money. If we're worried about money, I think there's an indirect money we'll get back. If we do a quality job and do a high quality job, I think that will pay dividends indirectly when people find this a more attractive place to live. So that's my pitch. So I appreciate the concession, but it's not just passion. It's based on some other guidance and some other things that we have established. So thank you.
Okay. You have some questions?
No question. I was just wondering if we were ready to give the draft.
Well, Emily, what have you jotted down as what we're tasking you to do.
So I have that the RFP for demolition needs to state that we would like to retain the porch and the stone columns and the decorative trim. That's something like Marchant said that we'll have Matt work on pulling that down. And then one point of clarification I would like to get from council, are we going to salvage any of the other existing stone on the house and set that aside and save it? And then did we agree that we are not saving the chimney and that wall structure?
Well, my view of it, I'm assuming, is that we wanted to recapture the chimney material just in case we want to rebuild it back later on in the concept that they're talking about, if that's the way the architectural development goes. We may want to just recapture all the stonework,
Okay,
but it doesn't have to be held together. You know, it can be
Okay.
broken apart, but reusable pieces.
okay.
We'll have to ask Roberto on that since he's got some masonry experience behind him, right? Is that doable, saying recapture the stone material?
Yeah, I mean.
Okay. So if that clause could be added, that should be about all the amendments that would be required to the RFP.
Okay, and then Matt and I will discuss a safe area for storage out of being attractive nuisances for children.
Yes.
Okay, and that's all the items on retaining, correct? Okay. So with that, that will be properly updated and we can proceed with posting the demo for the RFP for demo, sorry. It's been a long day.
Okay.
If council's ready for that.
Yep. So directed.
Okay. And then if you guys are ready tonight, do you want to go ahead and give a directive on the architectural piece of it? Or do you want time to think what you want the directive to be and give it Monday night?
Is it possible for you to draft up the RFP and allow us a chance to look through what it entails based on the elements that we've asked you to retain through the demo? And so we kind of understand where what type of direction to go in
So you
as like a
guys
starting
want
point?
to, so are you asking to receive the RFP for demolition draft?
No, I'm asking, can you draft the architectural review, or architectural, oh my gosh, long day as well. Architectural RFP with the discussion that we've had, and then us to allow input on that after? Or do you need more input from us for the architectural RFP?
I can take a stab at it, but it certainly won't be ready for several weeks. Like it'll probably be the better part of a month and a half.
Okay, well, I think that you had originally established like it'd take at least 2 months, right? So I think that's reasonable. But I don't know where to start for you for the architectural.
Does council want to give a directive for staff to start working on an RFP for an architectural consultant to come in and give a proposal for design work for the construction of a pavilion to include design elements of the Town Park Lewis home as modeled in photos, dimensions given, drone footage, etc. So if you want to say that directive, then we can start working on that.
I say yes.
I'm comfortable with that.
I say
Yeah.
yes.
To include the concepts the ARB's presented, or?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Also, I don't know what's required or what effort is needed to at least be able to scope this by getting dimensions. I think that was one of the requests that you had, right, Marchand?
I would assume the RFP would
Measurements
include,
and-
you know, as part of the proposal, hey, if the basis of it's going to be the dimensions of the original one, then that would be the starting point. So that would be a part of the RFP for an outdoor pavilion with these sort of, kind of like what we listed here, these general
Right.
concepts and designs.
But we need to capture that. Is there a survey requirement for that to be able to capture these dimensions?
I think we can either contract that out separately, or we can have that as
So-
part of the RFP.
So that's a question for Emily. If we're going to go demolish it, we got to get this done before demolishing, right?
Sure. I think something for that, I'm sorry, Tracy. Something for that, I think, would be under the spending policy, just to go out there and do a survey of.
And I'm having Thomas look, we might have one from previous work or when we purchased. I don't know if it would be as inclusive to have all of the measurements, but we could have one on file.
Yeah,
We'll
'cause-
inquire.
You're right, it might be in the master plan file. Okay, good call. Yeah, we may already have it.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure we just need something to give to the architects for the design of it.
As inspiration, but they'll give, to specify contribution of thought on their part as well. Yes? Okay.
Okay, I'm going to belabor this because I'm going to not ask as many questions during the budget. So when most applicants come in, they base it on, like the hotel across the street, they base it on the guidelines that we've established and sort of presented that. So the only thing for the RFP for that is that they take into consideration our current policies and design standards as part of that. That's the basis from which we came forward. So that would be the one sort of concession, hey, RFP for presentation of architectural design with multiple concepts that generally follow the parameters as outlined in our land use documents, and also as part of the ARB and whatever professional recommendations they make. So, okay, thanks.
You're quiet over there, Matt. Do you have any comments?
No more comments.
Okay. I think we belabored this. Did you get enough of information and direction?
I think so.
Okay, so if there's no objections, move as directed.
Okay.
No objections, so, good.
Appreciate everyone's time discussing this. We could definitely move forward.
Next item, alternative trash schedule survey. Now, where'd that go? Here it is.
So following a discussion with our finance liaisons, Roberto and I are currently in the process of reviewing our RFPs for the residential trash services, and we talked about the alternative schedule. So currently, the residents have trash pickup twice a week and recycling once a week. And all of our bidders have put in their packages a alternative schedule of picking up trash once a week and recycling once a week. Our finance liaisons highly encouraged us to draft up a survey for discussion tonight and include numbers so that our residents are fully aware of why we're asking these questions and what impact it would have. So in a general manner, I tried to give an introduction here. I can happily read it out loud for anybody who might be watching and didn't get the handout. So the town of Haymarket is currently reviewing requests for proposals for residential trash services. The RFPs have come back at a significantly higher fee for the same services, an increase of approximately $55,000 to $130,000 from our current budgeted amount of approximately $96,000. The town council and staff are working to analyze the RFPs and determine the best route forward for our residents while continuing to operate in a fiscally responsible manner. Council is currently reviewing the proposed FY 2025 budget and working to ensure the increased amount can be adequately covered with the current revenue sources and other proposed expenditures for FY 2025. With the increase in mind, please answer the following questions. Do you currently put your trash out on Monday and Thursday? Do you currently use the recycling services provided to you? Are you open to an alternative schedule for trash and recycling services, meaning once a week pickup? When selecting a trash contractor, how important is it that the contractor offers an app interface to provide updates and statuses with customers? And do you have any additional feedback? Essentially, I'm trying to ask our residents, do you utilize both days of trash pickup, or some, they only use one day? Do you also use your recycling services? Through our RFP discussions with our bidders, we realized that not everybody uses the recycling services, and some of them offered that they will track who does use the recycling services. I figured this would just be good knowledge to have. Are you open to an alternative schedule? I do not have a set date if we were to go to 1 day a week pickup. Therefore, I did not put a day of the week in this question. We have been given a couple bids that have an option for an app where our residents would be able to log on and check where's their trash truck today. Has there been any notice and change of schedule? So is that important to our residents there? And then if they have any additional feedback. I know some complaints we've had is that the recycling bin or the trash bins are very damaged and won't be replaced by the company. So I do expect that to be some feedback. Are there any other questions that you guys or recommendations for the survey?
We got a lot of people. We'll start all the way over on the left of me. Matt, we'll start with you.
Yes, I just look at the service. First of all, thank you for putting this together because I know this is something that I totally agree that I think highlighting this to our residents, letting them know the cost is extremely important. And the first couple of questions, one of the things I've learned on surveys is to be very explicit. And I think one of the things I would say for the question, maybe rewording that a little bit, and say, Bangsley, do you currently utilize both days of service and put your trash out on both Monday and Thursday? Being very, very explicit in it, because I think some people might read it and just go, yeah, sure I do, and when in fact they may not. It's just, and same thing for the second one, do you currently use the once a week recycling pickup? And just being very, very explicit about how we do that. That would be my recommendation on this so that we can get very clear answers.
Okay.
Otherwise, I agree. I actually wouldn't go more than 5 questions. I think, because otherwise people they just won't answer or they get frustrated.
Okay.
Hey, Mary.
My question was more sort of post-survey ideas and your communication with the bidders. If the survey has a result of residents not interested in recycling, or there's not enough interest in recycling, in an effort to maintain like the green recycle, reduce, reuse, recycle concept that I think is important, would there be an option to have like a recycling bin posted somewhere in town to send our residents to, rather than making them drive all the way to Balls Ford? If we're not going to have a curbside service, would the town entertain like possibly hosting like a recyclable drop-off space here or at our park?
Certainly, I don't see why not. I'm not looking to get rid of any recycling services. I'm more, with this question, just trying to determine, do 90% of our residents utilize recycling services or do 40%? That's just more of a knowledge baseline for us for going forward, but I would not modify and get rid of any recycling services. I don't think our community would like that.
No, I don't think so either.
Yep.
Thank you.
So more just gaining data
Okay, all right, gotcha, thank you.
on that question.
Hey, Marshawn.
So in the RFPs that come in, were we talking about just Mondays and Thursdays or just 2 days a week? So the only question would be, do we want to solicit which days are preferable? Is that even an option, or they tell us when we pick up or not?
I think
Does that make sense?
Have your trash picked up on Monday and Thursday, right?
currently Monday and
Okay.
Thursday, yes.
So that's why I stated Monday and Thursday was
Repeating what we
was
already have.
current.
Okay.
Yes, so the goal is if council funds it and you guys are available to it, we stick with our current plan.
To drop one or the other, okay.
If we do alternative schedule, then we would talk with them and see what dates work into their schedule that they can provide.
Do you think that would be a lower cost?
Yes, so,
Because Mondays and Thursdays are like
Roberta?
premium because it's after the weekend.
I don't know if the day of the week's a premium. That's
okay.
actually a good question. That I don't know.
That's only where I was going with it. I assumed if we're going to go to 1 day a week, do people want it in the middle of the week? I don't know if that complicates it or not, but
We could ask if there's a premium, but there is a significant savings if you do go down to 1 day a week.
gotcha.
That would put you closer to the increase of only about $55,000 versus the increase of $130,000 on your town contract for the year.
So by emphasizing this is just, I heard you clearly, just because we would pick one day or the other, but likely would stay with either a Monday or a Thursday. Okay, thanks.
I guess I'll go. I'm going to interject. Usually I like to wait till the end for me, but the item number 4, the app, is that a value add or is that actually a line item on the contracts that you've gotten a response for?
I will verify, but I think it's a value add.
Yeah, if it's value add, I don't know if we even need to offer that as a question here.
Okay.
I know in some of the contracts in our conversations, you said that there was a line item for yard waste. Maybe you need to add something here for yard waste?
Okay.
For recycle for the yard waste? Because a lot of people don't associate that with bottles and cans, right? Yeah, to piggyback on Matt's being specific, I'm assuming you're going to use SurveyMonkey, so you'll use radio buttons for Monday, Thursday, both, and stuff like that. So definitely locking in on a solid answer as opposed to a generalized answer. That's all I have. Pass it on.
So my question or questions would just have to do with how we're going to distribute the survey. And so Facebook, website,
Newsletters
newsletter.
going out.
Okay. And then could we do a QR code where we can knock on our neighbor's door and make certain that there's participation?
Yes, we will have, in the newsletter, we'll also have that QR code that's really easy to scan.
Okay.
What's the, and then I'll let you go. What's the ideal time frame? Because I would like to get answers quick in our review process. Once we get it out, so like 2 weeks out to the public, 1 week.
Newsletters going out when?
I believe newsletters scheduled to go out early next week.
I think
So,
2 weeks
2 weeks?
is reasonable.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
After the
I think 1
newsletter,
week's a little,
allow 2 weeks?
Yeah.
2 weeks
yes,
from
I
the
think so.
newsletter?
2 weeks from the newsletter, and then that way it's aligned with distribution. Sorry, I
And
need
also
to hit
gives
that.
us
I'd
time
like
with
to
the
see
budget.
results by the next work session, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alexander?
Yes, Emily, in this write-up, I think the objective here is to try and reduce the increase, right? So instead of saying that working to ensure the increased amount can be adequately covered, right? Make it seem as if regardless of what they decide, we'll have an ability to cover the increase. Why not just be straightforward and just say we're trying to figure out a way to reduce the cost or reduce the increase,
Reduce the impact.
right?
Emily, may I interject real quick?
Sure.
Is it possible to advertise the bid prices? Is that allowed?
No.
No? Okay. So we
So-
wouldn't be able to advertise like what we are offering
No,
in the
that's
sense
inside
of like, this
information.
is for our current service versus if we only did 1 day a week? Like
So
we
I
can't
put a
advertise
generalized, I put a generalized number in this intro here. So I put approximately what we pay per annual here.
Okay.
On current services. And then I put a range that it's going to increase. So I can add more language to it, but this range is going to cover, if we were to go with an alternative schedule, we're still going to see the lower end of that range as an increase. If we go with current services, we're going to see the higher end of that range as an increase in fee amount. To answer your question, Councilmember Bane, I didn't want the public or our residents to read it and make an assumption that we already decided for them to reduce the amount and reduce the level of service they're receiving.
If we say we're attempting or trying to reduce, right? We're not saying we're going to reduce, but that's the objective, right? We're trying to reduce ultimately, right? It is.
We aren't going to be able to, we're going to see an increase no matter what. It's a matter of, are we looking at a low end or a high end?
Reduce the increase, and reduce the increase level, but that's, okay.
Understand the use or the needs of the residents, right? That's pretty much what we need to find out.
I understand that. Again, this makes it seem as if regardless of what they decide, right, that we are open to, I know we're going to be, right, that we're going to be open, we're having ability to cover that additional cost, right? That's what it makes it seem, right? So if I was reading this, right, I would like, well, if the town can cover it, then why am I going to want to choose to reduce the level of service, right? Of course, I'm going to say, oh, keep it as is, right? Is that, if that makes sense, right? That's what I'm.
Yeah.
But okay, move.
Did you have more
Okay.
discussion?
Circling back to
So-
Joe.
Go ahead, Councilman Pasanello.
You're up now, Joe.
Okay. I just have 3 comments very quickly. I think I heard we have to be somewhat careful about what information we provide because of the ongoing negotiation that I anticipate will happen. So we have to be somewhat mindful of that. My second comment is it might also be helpful just to explain to residents why this is happening. And Roberto, you can correct me if I'm wrong or provide additional, but it seems to me the costs are going up due to organic growth in town, meaning additional residential units, inflation, without a doubt inflation, and the county tipping fees. Now, I'm not sure if there are other elements, Roberto, but it would seem to be helpful just so people understand why those numbers are going to go up anywhere from, what, 50% to 130%, roughly? So I guess if you distill it down in its simplest terms, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to find out, would you be willing to pay more for 2 days a week or versus 1 day a week, which presumably would be less? I mean, we can't get into, detailed numbers, but that's essentially, from a consumer perspective, that's what I think we're trying to get to. And, how you word it is up to you, but I think that's the key question. Those are my comments.
So during this RFP process, one of the reasons we're giving asking this question is because many of the vendors models have changed. Many of them are doing once a week pickup. We're one of the very few that still has a twice a week pickup with trash and recycling. Obviously, they always want to give us all options. We're always looking to provide the same level of service, but also see where we can also save on the budget. But the budget presented to you in front of you is fully funding for everything to continue as is. But during these conversations with these contractors, the question came up as to, if you guys do want to save money, this model you guys are doing is not really implemented as often on other jurisdictions. Here's another option. The discussion during finance kind of led that way in the sense that let's ask the public, for transparency. Let's ask the public what their thoughts and feels are on this. As far as the pricing, Councilman Pasanel has a point. I mean, currently, right now, we are servicing 504 total residential units. Commercials have their own contract. And the next year, we'll be servicing another 603 residential units. So obviously, the amount of units does increase. Some of these contracts have escalations. We have been on the tail end of a contract that a few years ago when COVID happened, the pandemic happened, companies were trying to find how to continue doing business. We held them to the contract at a really low rate, and now we're kind of seeing the results of that with all the RFPs proposals have been submitted. Their costs have gone up. Escalations, annual escalations are going from a set percentage for the next 5 years on top of any additional disposal fees the county may require, or a flat rate, or if the CIPU is greater than the flat rate, they want to go with that. So there's many factors when it comes to this. I guess we're just trying to give all options and have it very out there, transparent for the resident, as well as council for this decision. I don't know if that would help you guys any understanding the concept on that right now, but
No, that helps. But again, the challenge is going to be that I'm not sure what percentage of our residents respond to surveys, right? Let's assume we get 50 people to respond, and whatever result ends up being, that's the result, right? We're not going to have a full understanding of the rest of the residents, how they feel about this, right? Going from 2 days to 1 day. Or it's just going to be, we're not. It just gives, I don't think it's going to even give us a good idea, to be honest with you, right? But
I think
anyways.
I think in this aspect though, we should see it more as we're trying to be transparent, put the information out there. Now, if the residents want to, respond to that or speak on it, you'll be surprised. I know there was an issue earlier this week that there was a post up there, and we got a lot of phone calls, a lot of visits. So I agree with you, but it's more about continuing to be transparent and make sure that trying to make them aware of what's going on is the goal ultimately.
So to follow up on that, so let's assume 50 people respond. Let's say 30, 40 are in favor of going from 2 days to 1 day. How are we, what will that mean to us?
Again, I think that'll be a council decision, because I know as well that some people may not be responsive to the social media aspect, but I know that you guys do talk to your neighbors, you guys talk to residents out there. We do hear them out, but yeah, ultimately, it's a decision that you guys will have to make.
We got to assume it's a sample of the populace, and this would be a reflection of what the whole populace would be, even though it may be a little biased. This is the only way we can come up with some type of sample, right?
One quick thought for council, and I could have mentioned this at the beginning of the discussion. Roberta's presenting tonight to you a budget that incorporates a large amount for the trash services to remain at the current schedule. So if it's not the desire of the council to reduce the level of service that we currently provide our residents when it comes to trash, then it's just a discussion of how we ensure that we continue to have a good working budget for FY25. So, and going forward. And so if that's council's desire, we certainly don't have to consider an alternative option. That might come apparent in our next discussion of the budget when we go line by line. Again, Roberto's plugged in the numbers. He's going to present you with something that works, and we can wiggle from there on everything else.
Do you think just jettison the survey for now, or?
That's up to council. If everybody up here and Mr. Pasanello, if all of you guys do a straw vote and you say we like twice a week service, and I know my neighbors and my constituents want that too, then certainly none of us need to go the extra mile to learn that in a survey as well. If you already know tonight your intention is to keep the same schedule and same level of service, then let's just do that and say that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about it in the budget work session, and then we're going to make sure we plan for it every year after.
Is there perhaps a caveat to that is when we finalize the budget or go to hearing, that if we're doing sort of a summary, maybe you
Absolutely.
put a summary in there that says this includes in,
Maintaining the level of service that we currently provide.
okay, well, maybe that's the other option too.
Yeah. Tracy Lynn?
I didn't want to waste time, but I figured.
Personally, I think I'm in favor of doing the survey.
Okay.
I think I think just doing a straw poll in my own neighborhood and from the people that I've spoken to, this is about a 50-50 split
Okay.
from the people that I've spoken to. I think that it's incumbent upon us, frankly. I know we're going to put things out on Facebook. I know we're going to put things out on the town website. We're going to put it in the newsletter. It's on us. We should be going out and getting as many people and, encouraging them to respond. When we did that for the mobile food truck ordinance, I think we doubled the response rate. We kind of pounded the streets a little bit. So I do agree, and it's frustrating, Councilman, that we get a small percentage always, and it is. And I'm always trying to encourage more and more open communication and more people's response. But on this one, I think I've spoken to some folks, and I think I would do the survey.
Can I respond? No, I'm not trying to say let's not do this survey. What I'm trying to get at is whatever we end up with in terms of the people that are going to respond to this survey. I don't know if we should take another, if we don't get that many people to respond, is it a true representation of how the town, most of the town residents? That's my concern. I'm not saying don't do the survey, right?
And I respect it. You're right, it is. I think that we have to kind of, we have to weigh it and discuss it. That's, it's whether it is. I think, that's my opinion.
You good?
I'll be quiet now, yes.
Lisa Lynn?
So I'm going to echo what Matt had said in regards to during doing the survey. I think any time that we can encourage engagement within our community and get their input on something that is impacting not only services provided, but we have a budget, that money's coming from somewhere, right? I think it's important, and I think it is up to us to get out there and make certain that there is participation. So I say do the survey.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I certainly would concur with that. And the upside of doing that is not just the feedback, but also us communicating with them and making them aware of an issue that we're grappling with. So it's two-way street, and it makes a lot of sense to do that. But I do have a question for Roberto relative to the contract itself, or the RFP. Let's put it that way, the RFP. What is the term length typically for this RFP? And I want to follow up with a question about termination clause.
So to address your question on this RFP, how long it was out there for?
No. How long, if
Contract.
once you make a selection?
Five
how long-
years.
I'm sorry?
5 years.
So 5 years, okay. And relative to termination, do we have a termination clause in that RFP? I can't remember.
We do. I would have to go back and read it again, but we do.
Okay. All right. I'm just curious about that, what the conditions are for that. Should we change our minds or something of that nature, or find that the service isn't that great? Because it's not just the costs that we're talking about. We're talking about the quality of the service, right?
Correct.
The delivery of service. So, I mean, I would imagine that's probably also a consideration in making a selection, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have. But I agree with the survey.
Okay, we all good? Okay. I'd like, before we move on, I'd like to insert another line item to the agenda if there's no objections. Councilmember Mary had something she wanted to address, which
I
if there's
promise
no
it's quick.
objective, it would be a directive. So if there's any objections, let me know.
Did we come to consensus on this, though? We're doing?
I think we did. Did we get everything you needed?
We're going to do the survey?
Yes.
Only last suggestion, sorry, before we move on. Only last suggestion would be on this, if we do it with the postcards get thrown away, I assume, we try to do a postcard notification. On the newsletter, I know if you have to open it, there's a high chance people aren't going to open it. It's the only thing I can think of. Is there a way on them? Or just somehow in bright colors, survey on trash removal enclosed, something that when I'm going through my junk mail, I see that and it attracts my attention. Otherwise, I think people, if you have to open it, you're not going to see
Do
the.
you throw away our newsletter?
Should I start putting quizzes with prizes in there for
I don't know.
our
I just-
council members?
The attention span of today's public is very limited, so if we're expecting people to, anyway, if that doesn't cost too much, if there's a way to flag it, that's all my suggestion.
Sure, on one side of it, not the mailing address side, but the other, we put our meeting schedule, so I can put it right there with,
Trash survey.
yeah,
Thanks.
we can do that.
Can I make a suggestion, Emily and staff? If we're going to include a URL in the newsletter, can we look into leveraging tiny URL?
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay, now any objections for the insert of the line item for council? Okay.
No.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I'm hoping to get a directive from council to move forward with staff on planning an elementary community outreach day. I'm currently just calling it the Haymarket Open House. It's going to be geared for K to 5, grades K to 5, and for Flag Day, which would be June 14th. Tentatively, we had in mind a story time with council, a tour of the police department, have the Art Alliance hold open a craft session and keep the museum open for people to come and go, have a historic scavenger hunt out of a brochure that we could print, and it would not be event specific, but can be utilized throughout the summer for families. And then also invite Nadia for our community garden to be down at the park to greet families down there as well. Those are kind of the big hits that we've been talking about, and I just wanted to get the thumbs up from council to move forward on that planning.
I have no objection.
Okay, any questions out there? What kind of effort are you looking at staffing, from staffing? Because this is added work for them.
Sure. So it's going to be Friday, June 14th. So it will already be a work day that staff will be present for. And really, I think staff is mostly just going to be manning stations at most. I was going to ask members of council to host different story times if they're willing to sit in on the dais or up here and read to families a story about local government. I just thought with Flag Day that would be wonderful. And then we're going to have staggered times where it's going to be, story time and then a tour of the PD, a little break, story time, tour of the PD, break, story time, tour. And then the rest of the items are kind of come and go as you please. So that way families can come at times that are convenient for them. But we also won't just have a constant revolving door every moment of every day or the whole day.
So
Yes.
what kind of prep time are you going to require the staff to put into this and all that stuff? That's what it boils down to, because it's a distraction from their everyday activity. So that's what we need to find out.
So I think I can let Emily speak to this. I think that she had some ideas, and especially in terms of brochure prep and things.
Yes, so update for council, small aside, we have gone through the interview process for our event position. I fully expect that we have a candidate who would be available to start in the next 3-week time period. So this person would be assigned to helping with this event should it get approved. So they would be in charge of really doing a lot of probably the correspondence back and forth with Mary. I would sit in on those meetings as well to make sure we're hitting everything. We were going to discuss funding availability to do an order of a little goodie bag item or something to that nature. But I'm looking at treating this as a community service day, if you will. We want to educate and have our youth come in and learn all about us. So I think the day itself will be kind of a event day. Not a lot of current workload will be happening on that Friday. Lead up time to it, Mary and I can come back with more of an outline, but I don't foresee more than maximum 10 hours of time total between myself and this event person. Really would be posting and sharing out flyers and information. It would just be the day of, which is the actual event.
And can you also speak to the brochure?
Oh, yes. We have a individual who has come to town and is helping us do some historic research to update our historic walking tour. So she's currently working on that research of all of our buildings, what we have put together now. We're going to turn that into a scavenger hunt for these children. So we're going to gear it towards that age group. That's something we wanted to kind of generally do anyway, that would keep for the whole summer. It's something you could do at any time. It's not exactly for that one day only. And then on top of that, we're going to still have the historic walking tour that doesn't have the youthful element of a scavenger hunt. So we're going to kind of hit two birds with one stone there. So that's currently in process. We were going to be working on it anyway for the walking tour portion.
Okay.
So I think this is a great idea. I'm very excited about it. I would only have a question in regards to some sort of a budget outline for that expectation for the program in and of itself. And I think we could utilize that as well as formulating an outline for when any of us should champion a program so that we are all very aware of what we have. But I think it's great.
Okay, I can do that.
Feedback from Chief?
We'd be good to go with whatever you need.
And I would like to just add, we're really hopeful when Mary and I first started talking about this, that Chief is going to read one of the books that he helped author. So we thought that was a really cool experience for the kids to do and for all of us to go listen to as well.
You might see how bad I write.
You write good?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. Happy to participate and help out any way I can. The question I had is, if I'm not mistaken, on Flag Day, doesn't the American Legion also do something that day down at the town park, or I forget what group it is, to put all the flags out?
That's a wonderful question. This year, the Rotary Club, it's the Rotary Club.
Thank you.
This year, they actually asked permission to do their event in September for the week of September 11th. And so that was their preference this year, is to move that to the fall. And we gave the approval, so we won't have that competition. But normally, you are correct. They always do it that weekend.
Then my concern is lifted.
Okay?
Okay, saw Joe's hand first, then Alexandra, you're next. Joe?
No, I'm just curious, how many kids are we talking about? How large a group we're looking to accommodate?
We hadn't established a goal. If council is concerned about the size of groups, I'm happy to go through with Emily some options, kind of like Eventbrite, where they have to kind of like register for the event. If we would like to set a maximum or minimum number, I'm happy to do that. I was kind of thinking it more on the concept of like, Haymarket Day, where it's open to anyone who's free that day to come in, and these are the times we're available. But if we're concerned about capacity, I'm happy to explore the avenues of like Eventbrite or other applications that we can manage attendance.
And in our previous discussions, when Mary and I were brainstorming this, we were hopeful that setting up modules would also help with any kind of crowd control. So if we had a good group in here for the reading and we had some people trickle in, maybe we could send them over to the PD for a tour. And then they could go visit Nadia at the park and then town museum and do the scavenger hunt. So we were hoping that the modules would help with the load of the crowd as well.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I think a little bit more meat on the bones to better understand logistics for safety.
Okay.
I'm sure that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary,
Alexander.
I'm supportive. I like the idea. I support it. The only thing is I'm not going to be here on June 14th, so I just want to let you know in advance so you don't think that I.
That's okay.
I'm gonna be-
No, it's a week after the last
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Did you have
understand.
something, Tracy? or-
No, I'm good.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, last comment, just kind of, this is more of a thinking out loud, certainly get into details, but do you envision that there could be an opportunity to partner with some of the local businesses as well? Something like a Brewster's or Cookies and Cream to provide treats, something like that?
I love that. Actually, in our initial concept discussion, Emily had talked about possibly asking local businesses, like different restaurants and things, to create a special like family menu or kids menu kind of thing themed around Flag Day to match this. And we kind of mentioned it briefly with Tracy Lynn being the business liaison. We're actually going to meet about it tomorrow if we're given the directive to move forward with this and just flesh that out as well. So that's a concept already. Yeah.
We could even see if, I know some of our ice cream vendors have a mobile ability. We could even see if they would be willing to pop up in front of town hall and make something that attracts more people in.
Will they have their mobile license by then?
Of course, it would be a good working example.
I was thinking it, but I wasn't going to say it.
Yeah, too soon though. Okay, anybody
No,
else
Friday
have
before
comments?
is the annual water balloon battles, so it'll be 2 Fridays that we're
Oh,
committing,
boy,
so.
a lot of activity.
Chief, make sure you're ready.
It is summer fun. So may I ask if staff and I, or Emily and I, have the directive from council to move forward with fleshing this out, and we'll present a final concept before implementing anything?
Absolutely.
Awesome, thank
No
you.
objections. Okay, next item then, the budget work session. Yes. We will take a 5-minute recess. It's actually pretty good.
Sorry, I got kids that are texting me.
Okay, let's start this meeting back up. Roberto, we're on your line item. Time to discuss the budget for 2025.
All right, so in front of you, I have placed our new revised budget. The reason being is because on Friday afternoon, I received the new general liability insurance renewal proposal. The first one that came back was a little higher than what I wanted to be, so we negotiated some changes that was able to save the town about $6,000, but yet still keep the same level of coverage. So I wanted to include that in this budget since we'll be discussing it. I will give it to the clerk to go ahead and update it, put it up there for the agenda packet, to update the agenda packet. But that is what you guys have in front of you. All right.
Joe, do you have something before we
Yes, sir.
start? Hold on.
Roberto, if you could help me out, I know I'm a little needy, but I don't have that in front of me. And if you could just give the line item number so I can follow along, it might be helpful.
I think I emailed it to you before the meeting.
Absolutely.
You call somebody, he can run silence. Where's the copy? This one? I'll need it for him.
All right, so I'm not sure what you were talking about, so I missed that.
So we're going to have one delivered now to you, a hard copy. But I will name out the line items so you can follow by, but we'll go ahead and scan that one over to you. Okay. So let's go and start on this then. So the first line item, obviously, one of our important ones is the real estate line item 3110-01. The proposed budget here is basically proposing to keep a flat tax rate. The increase we're seeing here would be based upon the natural assessments, increase in assessments that the county has given us for the projects. This assessments include the commercials projects and as well as the residential parcels. Parcels. On the side, I wrote a note that our actual assessment for the year was $458,228,700. But out of those assessments, $7,473,900 are actually exempt parcels. So we won't be able to tax them as well as the county. These exemptions are, for example, the churches, our town-owned buildings, for the space that's not being rented, the museum, and there's a few exemptions when it comes to the elderly and veterans that have qualified through the county. With that being said, by removing the ones that the county has, assessor has sent me with this assessment list. That number actually drops to 450,754,800. So by the proposal of keeping the flat tax rate, it shows that we would, for the proposed tax rate, would collect 500,338, which is a 44,555 increase from our current year. I have also given you a sheet. As every year, we also have the question of what it would look like if we reduced it to equalize it. And this year, also, if we equalize it plus a 3% to adjust for the CPI, the inflation rate. I don't know if this is something you guys want to discuss right now a little bit into it, but my my ask would be for council to move forward, if we can also do a public notice that the tax rate, proposing a 0.111 rate, which obviously would see an increase due to the assessments. But with that being said, for the council, I'm not looking to increase the tax rate for the town. If anything, keep it flat, or obviously if council chooses to reduce it in any way, that'll still be doable. But definitely want to have that public hearing for the May council session. Anyone have questions on this line item?
Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can support advertising the flat tax rate at 0.111, but I am going to try to convince others to follow my lead and try to reduce that a little bit. But we'll have that discussion going forward. I would like to see us figure out what the rate would be for 0% increase. Thank you, Big Al. I got the document I saw. What the 0% increase would be, what that tax rate would look like. Would it be 0.105, 0.109, whatever that number is, and see what we can do perhaps to get us down to that number. But that's for another day. Thank you.
I actually could answer that. I will forward this over to Councilman Pasanello, but that will be a 0.101 if we want to equalize the rate.
Thank you.
Alexander?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, Joe. That's something that I had also, I'm glad to hear what you're proposing, and I think that's where an alignment when it comes to that. I think I had mentioned it last time.
So, I mean, I guess we're talking about a $44,000 increase, give or take, on a $4 million budget roughly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's something I think we should seriously take a look at for various and sundry reasons, given the fact that we have increased our revenue stream significantly with all the development in town. I think that's something we can do for our residents, but we can discuss that later.
Yeah. I'm biting my tongue on that one, Joe.
Yeah, I know.
And the main reason is because, I've always wanted to separate the trash fees outside of our taxes and make that a separate line item. When you look at our trash fees increasing as much as they are, this doesn't even cover it. I think it should be staying at this rate because at least this supplements it. But that's a talk on another day, but I couldn't bite my tongue any longer, sorry. But
Well, we got to see what it is per unit cost.
Yeah.
And
Right.
understand what those increases are.
Yes. That being said, even though for the longest time now, I've been saying, hey, reduce the tax burden on the residents, right? Keep us, I think I asked you if there was any way to keep it static, not let it go up based on the assessment. I think I asked that question, right? But I also have the same concerns that you have. One thing that we definitely need to talk about is, I think based on what I've seen, we're going to be running a deficit. Our expenses are much higher than our income based on what I've seen. So I do have some concerns.
Yep. Our trash should be paid for by our residential tax. It shouldn't be supplemented by business taxes and everything else. At least that's what I feel. But that's an argument we can have at another day when we do this line by line.
Well, just one more comment on that, if I may. I'd be willing to look at the equalized rate plus inflation. That might be a fair way to do a tax increase on the town. Because let's be honest, even though you might have a flat tax rate, you're still giving the folks an effective tax increase due to the assessments. So something that.
Real quick
Get
for a
that
moment.
document.
Is there any fiscal policies we have on how to approach this? Whether or not we present 3 different rates or impetus or rationale for reducing or equalizing the tax rate?
For the public announcement,
Or just in general, what policy we would follow?
The public announcement will show what the proposed rate is, what the difference would be if we reduced it. Obviously, in that public hearing, we'll show the information that you guys have in hand as a part of the presentation, because there will be a public hearing that the residents can come in and discuss.
We don't have other fiscal policies that we've adopted that requires us to offer those alternatives. Okay, thanks.
You had your hand up, Teresa?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh, making the sausage.
Make the sausage. Okay, I feel good now. Let's move on.
Okay. Some of the other, and please stop me if any time we're through this discussion you want me to stop to talk more about it, the line item, please let me know. The following line item that we're proposing increase is line item 3120-02. This is the business license tax. Currently, as you can see, the past year, we saw a significant jump. Considering, and that was, I said then, was considering the contractors, all the work that's being done, builders, and obviously the new home sales. With also the additional commercial businesses have come in, we're trying to adjust to that. With that being said, prior years, it was an uptrend, even through the first year after COVID. It was pretty high from the prior years without new businesses. Now that we're starting to get full businesses online, this is the number I'm proposing to jump up to 75,000 to expire about 325. Only reason being as well is because some of these contractors will still be doing work here, so they will have to renew and have a business license within the town. So that's going to be a one-off. Following year may drop more to just being an organic of what commercial businesses are in here, but we'll address that then.
Hey, Roberto, can I just go back to line item 3110-04 penalties?
Yes.
Go all the way across to the percentage?
I see that. I'll get that updated.
Okay, that should be 0, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
The next line item, 3120-05, meals tax. So this number has always been our biggest number that when it comes to revenue sources increasing. Obviously, with the new restaurants, in-town restaurants, this has always been a big revenue source. This number here includes the future restaurants. As we're aware, we have a Taco Bell that'll be coming online. We have potentially a few other ones that will be coming online as well. So this number is to hopefully address that. I feel confident in this number because this number could be done by a commercial restaurant, but not considering the smaller mom and pops that are popping up as well. But with the combination and depending on when they open, I feel like this will be an attainable number for the coming year. Yes, Joe.
So what's your projection for this year? What do you think we're going to end up?
Right now, we're going to hit that. I believe we're going to be very close to that 1.375 number.
All right, so I'm sorry, it's kind of muffled when I hear you from here. What are you attributing the increase to? Some additional restaurants? Is that what?
The additional restaurants, The additional restaurants.
Okay.
Any questions on that? Okay. Line item, well, it's not a line item, but the proffers. So the proffers here, the intent is to start using some of these proffers. In this case, was for the park project, as we had discussed a little bit earlier, touched on it. These are proffers that are meant and designated for a parks and recreation. So we intend to use them in that way. This is also to continue, begin and continue to work with the park project.
This is specific just to the allocation of park dollars.
Yes.
There's still other proper dollars that are coming in.
There is, and should have had that information in there, but yes, there is. This is only a portion of it, but there's still a balance there, which I can share with everyone on my monthly next week. I can show you guys the monthly report on what the profits look like right now.
Okay, thank you.
Going down on, staying on the revenues, going down in line item 3150-01 and line item 315-02. 03, my apologies, 03. So obviously we know that with the current federal rates, the rates are really have been doing well for us. You can see the numbers now. We exceeded what we expected. I have been paying attention to the federal numbers, entities, and I know that they do look to reducing the rates, but it's been the second time around that they have not. I believe that the second time around they didn't because inflation was not where they rate was not at where they wanted to be. They were hoping for be a 2.9. I think at the time it was a 3.2. But we will keep an eye on it, and obviously if in the budget at the time FY 2025 there needs to be a reduction, we will address that. 3150-03 and 3150-01. That is the interest gains revenues we get for the funds the town has by the money markets, the short-term.
Yeah, and we're going to be drawing down on some of that, so that's why you're suggesting a lower projection. Yes?
Yes.
No? Hey, Roberto, sorry to bother you again, but could you just go up to total, the line item 3130, permits, fees, and licensing, and go all the way across under percentage?
Okay.
That should be 0 again.
I'll correct that too. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Are we okay to move forward with that, Councilman Bayana?
Okay.
Only
So
s-
basically, it looked like what you were expecting is the interest rates to drop.
Yes, because the federal government is looking to reduce it. These first two go-arounds, they have not been able to do so, but the intent is to get down to at least a 4.36, I believe. Yeah, they've had meetings in January, and they had a meeting on March, last Wednesday, I believe.
Yeah, they kept stat.
Instead,
for
yeah,
now.
for now,
Who
but
knows?
eventually, I think they will be reducing them.
But also, you are drawing down quite a bit in the next fiscal, this fiscal year now, for the sidewalk, and next fiscal year, you'll be drawing down some, I would expect.
Correct.
That would be base.
Correct. Okay, moving on the revenue, again, on the revenue side with the rentals. The very first one here, line item 3151-07. This is a long-term tenant that we've been made aware that they intend to lease for another 5 years, but wanted some assistance for year one. This is for the Haymarket Church upstairs. They pretty much have almost the whole second floor up there. They've increased their square footage this year, taking up more of the spaces up there. They're great tenants. We do want to keep them, and for the fact that they will be signing a long-term lease, we want to offer them a one-time non-incremental annual fee of 3%, with the understanding the following years, we'll go back to the 3% annual increases.
Quickly, for disclosure on that, I am a member of the Haymarket Church, but I am not involved in any of the financial decisions that are involved with it. And if we can go back, I'm sorry, I thought of this after we went backwards. So going back to application fees, are we revisiting those in the near future, or are they pretty static for now?
I believe the intent is to revisit them once we do a public notice for the real estate. We'll also public notice the rates
Okay.
then as well.
But even if we
schedule.
were to change those rates, it probably wouldn't be significant enough to be remarkable in the budget. Okay, thanks.
Yes.
So it's staying the same as last year, right? Meaning there's no percentage increase. Is that based on the lease agreement? The reason I ask this is some of them do show percentage increases.
So this lease is coming to an end, and it's been a 5-year lease. This is more due to the fact that they've already increased their square footage. It's more of a trying to work with them for this first year. As it's their first full year, they'll have an increase of the square footage, the amount due. Some of the other leases are not at their end point. Theirs is ending as of June. Some of these, for example, Washington Realty, it's I think on year 4, so they still have another year. So that is per the agreements, the increases we're seeing up there. There's no.
So sorry, those, again, on the percentage, just for clarity, so these 3% increases are written into their existing leases already?
Correct.
And on Washington Street Realty, I mean, there's a note in there that it needs to be renewed. It's because this is in year 4, so next year they would
Their
be.
final year.
So there's not a risk of that necessarily going away in this year, correct?
Correct. Okay. Moving forward. The next line you see is it's a removal of the surplus sale. That was for the vehicle that obviously we will not have in the next budget. So that's just removing that item. The sponsorship on the town events line item 3165-00. While working on this budget, I was made aware by the town manager that there may be a transition point when it comes to the event position. So unsure how that would turn out, I just suggested that we reduce the budgeted sponsorship for now. This is not to say that our goal is not to hit it or surpass it, but obviously with that transition, unsure with how the person that would, if they take that position, would do in that to obtain that goal. That was the only reason why I suggested a reduction on it, as well as on the ornaments line item 3165-03. That's just due to more of what we're seeing in actual sales now that we have an actual inventory. Prior years we were ordering as we go. I believe now we have a good solid base inventory, and we're seeing more of a organic sales now. So just kind of wanted to reduce it a bit as well. Okay. The next line item is line item 3180-04. This is removing for obviously the reimbursement for the stolen check, as we won't have that part of the budget next year, hopefully. And as well as the recovery for private events. This is for if there's and this section is for if there's a specific event that they want to pay for security for the officers to be there. It's not a guaranteed, so it's never really budgeted because we don't know if anyone is going to do event aside from our own events that we do, the police department or the town.
That looks like another 100% decrease too.
Yeah, I do apologize. I did not catch these percentages. I was focused more on the numbers. I'll get those updated. Line item 3200-06, Department of Fire Programs. So these are funds that we get from the county or the state, apologies, the state, that they're to be used for the fire programs. We've seen an increase, and I believe the clerk informed me that we'll continue to get these 15,000. We've always received 10,000, but now they've increased that amount that's given to the towns. So we will see another 15,000 come in the coming year. If you remember, these are the funds we actually used to assist with the fire department with the vests and some of their water equipment about a year ago, I believe. And we're obviously looking to continue that partnership with them. So we'll be having that discussion as well too soon. Okay. The next increase on the revenues is 3200-16 DMV Select Grant. This increase with the proposed officers, that the two full FTEs that we're proposing, and with the additional abilities for people to have the ability to work these shifts, these programs, grant programs. We just did a little increase on that. You'll see it in the expenditure side as being, a pass-through. They'll be able to work up to $15,000 worth, the department, but they'll be receiving the $15,000 back through the DMV Select program. No questions on that. Going forward on item 4,000, carryover surplus. So anytime we have a surplus, if it's unused, unless we carry it to the next budget, we will go ahead and put it into reserves. I think this budget with the town manager, the goal is to start addressing projects on the CIP. So we intend to carry over some of this current year's surplus, about $155,000 to specifically be broken out on the expenditure side for specific projects. And we'll get to those line items there in a bit. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
No, go ahead.
So I was going to ask for council's edification. This is only a partial of what the surplus you project to be. What are you projecting at this point, where we'll end up?
So, the prior year, if you were to look on this budget at the bottom, it actually shows you where we've been trending for the past 5 years. Huge difference after page 7. If you guys were to go to page 7. That net ordinary income, that is actually our surplus. The fact that there's no negative on it, we obviously have done well. If you notice on FY22, from FY21 to FY22, we just about a little bit under doubled what we were projecting. Obviously, we did well. The town did well when it came to the pandemic. That's not to say everyone else did. We fared pretty well in it during the pandemic. And then we see the jump with the increase in commercial activity that's going on in town as well. To last year, this is an unaudited number, but it's $729,000 in surplus. This year, currently, right now, as of today, we're trending, $524,000. I believe Councilman Pasanello, in average between the two prior years, is what we will see. But I guess to address the 155, I'm very positive that we will have those funds there. And I went very conservative with the 155,000. It could be a little bit more. I believe last year we used 250,000 for a refund, but I didn't want to go that high unless council, wishes to increase some of the funds for the projects, the CIP projects.
So I'm assuming you will be dealing with that surplus discussion on where we redirect the money later, right?
Correct. Okay. Correct. Right now, what it is, and it's explained there on the side where I'm placing that funds now as a starting point. which is the Washington streetscape, the sidewalk repairs, and the town gateway signs. But again, if there's any specific projects, any increase in funds you guys want to do, that's where we have those discussions.
Yep.
Here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
If I understand correctly, as of March 20th, 2024, our net ordinary income, which is equivalent to basically surplus, is 524,374. And the budget that we are before us here for adoption is proposing to carry over the 155,000 out of the 500 as of right now, whatever thousand, towards the next budget, fiscal budget, right? Okay. Meaning, if we continue this way, potentially we can have up to 300,000 going to the, where would that money go to? What did you say?
I mean, it could go to what the council, projects,
Okay.
Funding more of the bigger projects, funding continuation of the park project, for example, or continuing or addressing the sidewalk. It is up to council how they want to see that, but to address the actual CIP would be my advice.
That normally goes into the reserves?
It would go to reserves, and then it's used mainly to fund the CIP expenditure line item. Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Kind of like the CIP, or the strategic plan that we'll be having. When are we going to have that next, Emily? Yeah, April's work session, strategic plan. That way we can identify initiatives. Like one thing, biggest complaint I get from our constituents is our website stinks. So I'd like to redirect some of this money into a line item for like 50,000 for a consultant to come in, suggest a tool to use, redesign the website, and actually get something that is capable for our event planner to actually communicate off of.
And I will, at that discussion, our next budget one as well, I'll show linkages in the CIP, so strategic planning and how it translates over to our CIP for the next 5 years.
Thanks.
Okay. The other big item you see there is the removal of the 926,477 from ARPA funds. That is with the intent that the project, the Park Sidewalk, will be completed by the end of June 30th of this fiscal year, 2024. So on the revenue side, this would bring that we're proposing a budget of $3,991,089, which is a reduction of 9.4%, but one of the reasons why it's such a high reduction is due to the ARPA funds that we're bringing over for this bigger project that we're doing. That's a big contributor to that reduction that you see here.
Roberto,
Yes.
is it possible to also show the total for the proposed changes, similar to the other columns?
Yeah, I can address that.
Both for income and expense.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, are we ready to move into the expenditures? Joe, you have your hand up. I'm not sure if that's meant to be up. Joe, you have your hand up. So I'm not sure. You have your hand up, so I'm not sure if you meant to have a question.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So I'll make sure I didn't miss you. Okay. Going on to the expenditures. Obviously, the coming year, we'll probably see the dice change a bit. I'm hoping not too much, but, a bit up there. We want to make sure the council gets the opportunity to be, attend education's conferences when it comes to the coming year. So some of these increases are to promote that for the new council to come in and be able to participate in a lot of the conferences they are available to them. The next item, the town administrative side. So the changes here you see are written on the side, basically converting the events director to a full-time position. This line is also where we're proposing a 3% COLA plus a 3% merit, ability for 3% merit for the staff and the town administrative side. We're also proposing a $1,000 increase on the overtime. Be it that we now have a maintenance coordinator. For the first time this year, we've noticed there's been times where some of our events, and I believe we're trying to ramp up a little bit more this year on events. The need for him to be here and properly get paid for the work he's doing is there. So we want to address that and not have to come back to council or feel that he can only have a certain portion to complete his work. Again, it's a number we have budgeted. It doesn't mean we'll hit it. As you can see clearly right now, Matt's been great at getting stuff done with his time here, but there tends to be some overlap there, as well as the deputy clerk, who also assists with the farm managing if she needs some help there. With the proposal of the new position, obviously we're going to reduce on the part-time line item by $16,455, but still having the monies there for our part-time planner as well as any potential assistance we may need for events if we need a part-time assistant. Are we good so far? Okay.
Kind of. I've said before, a lot of the overtime, if it's going to be realized for the events, I would like to see that realized within the events. I understand we need to keep overtime there just for special occasions that occur in place, but if it does boil down to an event, I would like that to be charged under an event code so we can see the realization of expenses towards that as opposed to just overhead, so to speak, right?
Okay. Going on, line item 1211004. The next following line items are attributed basically to these positions. Obviously, with an increase in the new full-time position at events, there's going to be taxes that are going to increase. The VRS has spoken to finance committee, the liaisons on this. So every year, this is the VRS is the Virginia Retirement System. This is a state-driven system. Every 2 years, they reanalyze each township individually and reassess what the contribution should be. To give you some context, when I first started here, the town was contributing about a little bit over 10%. Past 2 years, it was reduced to 6%. The next 2 years, it's going to be more than 13%. Obviously, the increase is also going to be part of the employees as well, contribute to their retirement. But that is one of the benefits that the town has always provided, and we'll be seeing an increase in this line item. Yes, Joe?
All right, I have a question about this line item. So are you paying up front for 2 years on this?
No, we pay monthly. It's collected through the payroll system. This is just more to let you know the rate won't change for the next 2 years. So we'll be paying 13% this year and the following budget year.
So why would we budget the following year and this year? The 26 fiscal year.
We're not. This is just more of informing you that the rates will stay the same for this year and next fiscal year. I can reword it on that comment section.
Yeah, because that's confusing. So you're saying there's a 100% increase in VRS. We're doubling.
Yeah.
We're doubling.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
And that's just for 1 year.
Yes.
And you're attributing that to the full-time positions, or what is that attributed?
So it's a full-time position is a big chunk of it, but also because it's based on your salary, your base salary. So on the PD, for the majority of our employees on our side, we're salaried, but for the the non-exempt, it's the base salary, not overtime. Overtime does not count towards your VRS. So it's basically based upon your base salary. So as the salaries increase, obviously that will also, the contributions will increase as well.
And so that rate will be the same for fiscal year 2026, and that's what you're meaning to say? That-
Yes, yes.
All right.
Okay, the next line item we're seeing a change to is our health insurance coverage. Prior year, this current year, we saw an 8.9% increase. This year, we are seeing another 10% increase. So we're adjusting for that as well. Obviously, with the new salaries, proposed salaries and the new position, we will see the life insurance increase a bit as well.
Roberto, I think previously in relation to the health insurance, I had asked a question regarding whether or not we're, shopping for better rates, or are we doing that?
So we have in the past, and because we participate in the state issued health coverage, we get better rates than we would going out there privately.
Okay.
So that's another reason why we kind of stick in. For the most part, every municipal participates in the same rate. I can tell you that a year and a half ago, I participated on a survey, and compared to other municipalities, we are pretty. We don't pay as much. Other municipalities are paying a lot more, even double to what we currently pay for the coverage, and it also consists with the size of the staff.
So based on that, maybe a collective buying power, most likely we have a good rate then, right?
So we try to do this also with the prior town manager tried to do this with the trash contract. Because we're so small, we at that time also had a better rate for that. So sometimes it doesn't help us to get in that pool because we got better rates on our own, just because of the size of our staff in our police department. We also do not have a fire department or public service or utilities. A lot of these other municipalities do have that. Trash service, they have that too. So that increases the risk and increases, when it comes to insurance and as well as health insurance.
All right, thanks.
Okay. The general property liability insurance, this is the new proposal we had. So we received the proposal on late Thursday. I got on a conference call with our representative. Initially, it was about 56,000 overall increase. This covers LODA, a line of duty, the workers' comp, our property insurance, our insurance for our police department vehicles, everything. The lump sum was 56,000. Once I talked to him, he gave me ways of, because of our current trend and our history, ways that we could reduce it by 5,000. And the way that we did that is by increasing our deductibles on some of the line items. Also, talking to Chief, the accessibility. The prior administration, at the time, 2019, I believe, wanted to double our excessive liability insurance from the standard 5 million to 10 million. And obviously council at that time voted to approve it. But in talking to our insurance rep, he didn't see the need for it, just because for a standard amounts, municipalities our size, 5 million is more than enough. I believe at the time, because of the certain staff we had on the PD side, they felt that there was a need for it. But we reduced that. I talked to Chief before this proposal was revised, and he felt comfortable by going back down to the 5 million mark. So we went ahead and did that. Some of the other deductibles are property. We increased some of the property deductibles just because we don't use them. That's basically what he told me. He's like, history shows that for the most part, you guys don't use these we have zero deductibles beforehand. obviously were costing us more on the contribution side. So we go ahead and increase it to 2,500. So there were ways that we were able to reduce it, trying to save some, and going by the history that he showed as well, it just made sense to do so. So we were able to reduce that. Going down to the accounting services line item 1211012. This is where we have the accountant and any additional accounting assistance we need during our audit. Mary has gone from having an independent firm to merging with another firm. Rates have gone up, and also the audit are requiring more through GASB 96, I believe, or 97, for more paperwork to be done when it comes to leases. So we are obviously seeing an increase in that. So this is more of a trying to have a little bit of a cushion in there. Right now, you see that number being low, but we're in the midst of working on the audit, so that will quickly change in this coming year. The next line item you see an increase is 121017 postage. This is due to just to address the consistency we're doing with the mailers. We're going to be doing that. We also tend to address also the additional home residents. So we hope to be more active in that. Again, the next line item, 1211019, mileage allowance. With having a full, or pretty close to full staff in the admin side, we're now being able to have the ability to attend some of these meetings, the town manager. At times we're having a small staff. It's really hard to take a day and leave the staff with 1 or 2 people in the office. Now we're able to have at least 2 to 3 people in the office, and when anyone's going to a conference or educational class. So we just wanted to start increasing that line item to give the ability to current staff to do so. Same thing with the meals and the convention education as well. The books and subscriptions, this is to address some of the annual subscriptions, say as Granicus increase, web hosting, and if we need to, our annual QuickBooks, just to address any of the existing subscriptions and new ones. Okay. Line item 1221001, legal services. So this is a combination of rates going up as well as the projects that are ongoing and potential litigations that may be coming up. So this is just to give us a starting point, but obviously the goal is not to spend $100,000, but we anticipate there might be some items that we will need to have the attorneys heavily involved in the coming year. The line item 1224001, auditing services. This year we are working on 2 audits, 2 fiscal years. The hope is to get by next year to get back on track to just doing 1 audit a year, and I believe we will be there. So this is just to address the cost for next year's audit. Is there any questions on the admin portion of the expenditures? Okay. Now we're going to go into the public safety, the police department. And as always, I will pass it on to Chief because he is the best person to address his budget. Just so you guys are aware, this is a budget that he worked on. I assisted him whatever way I could, but he handed it over to me. And we went ahead and implemented in the overall budget, but I'll go ahead and let Chief discuss it.
Okay, thanks, Roberto, appreciate it. So I'm going to go over several things, and I sent to all of you for the presentation that I was actually going to read tonight, and I'm still going to read the presentation for the sakes of transparency. But if you didn't have a chance to read it, you'll get to hear it now. So it was written as a manuscript, so that's why when you was reading it, it wasn't like an actual report or hitting high points. It's basically how I'm going to speak. So obviously, by looking at the budget, you know that there was a major impact that I'm want to implement, which is the addition of 2 FTEs, and that's going to be the huge talking point here. And there's a couple other talking points, but that's going to be the major one. So without further ado, when you are looking at a major budget request, you ask yourself 3 questions. What is the justification, the why? How will approving the request meet the needs or the objectives of the request, and can we afford it? And if so, where does the money come from? So this evening I'm going to show you the justification and how, if approved, these positions will contribute to accomplishing our objectives. I want to focus in on a couple statistics and trends that I've found over the last year that have a negative impact on the ability for officers to protect residents, businesses, as well as keeping Haymarket a pedestrian-friendly town. In 2022, our officers were dispatched for calls for service on an average of 30.25 calls per month. In 2023, that average increased to 49.25 calls per month. This is a 63% increase in the dispatch calls for service. More disturbing is with this trend is the increase in the complexity of calls. Complexity calls for service are those that require an extended time investment by the officer responding to the call. An example of a high complexity call may be a larceny, burglary, a fraud investigation. A medium complexity call will be that of a DUI or even a drunken public. Now, you might not say that's not a very complex call, but still there's an arrest involved with that, which involves more time spent at the jail, at the magistrate's office, and the paperwork involved with it. And then a low complexity call may be that of just a simple alarm call, which the majority of alarm calls are accidental. Somebody opening the bank, somebody opening the Chick-fil-A sets off an alarm, or a torrent of others. In 2022, officers responded to 50 medium to high complexity calls for service, and then in 2023, responded to 93 medium to high complexity calls for service. That's an 86% increase. Looking at last month's January-February report, officers responded to 49 dispatch calls for service. That's 14 more than January-February of 2023 and 29 more than January-February of 2022. 8 of these 49 calls had a medium to high complexity. Looking at the same report, you will see that officers conducted just 37 traffic stops. That's a 46% decrease in the traffic stops on our average. These statistics point to a clear trend. Officers are not able to maintain high visibility on the street. They are not able to conduct preventive patrols to thwart criminal activity, and they are not able to conduct traffic details. Reduced police presence makes Haymarket a less safe environment for its citizens, businesses, and the pedestrians. Officers are bogged down with interviews, follow-ups, reports, and mandated reporting of these calls for service and their daily interactions. This is ultimately the price of doing business. Increased residents, increased businesses need increased infrastructure and public safety. During the last 2 years, the town has added 3 residential building projects having over 130 homes and 40,000 square foot of commercial business space. This does not include the projects going on just outside the town that also impact the traffic and calls for service. Just earlier this month, Supervisor Weir advised council of several projects that will be taking place just outside Haymarket corporate limits, all of which will have an impact on public safety in the town. Lastly, the council will be moving forward with an innovative park plan, which again will have an impact on public safety. Keeping a high police presence in the community makes our residents, business owners, feel safe. This is the reason the businesses thrive here. This is the reason people want to live and raise their children here. Our community understands the value of community policing and personalized police services. Last year, I advised the Finance Committee and Council that it was a little early to add another sworn full-time position. We increased our part-time budget, thus assuring that we had the needed resources. This initiative has been successful. However, we are now at a time when we need to add full-time personnel to keep Haymarket safe. And I want to read an email to you that was sent to me by an officer on February 23rd. It's important to note in this email, he was just making me aware of the time frame in which there was no police presence in town by the Haymarket Police Department. He wasn't sending it for the purpose of this presentation. It says, Chief Lieutenant, while responding into work, Officer Anderson was dispatched to a domestic. While I was on that call at 17:28 hours, the town received another call from a 911 caller who was moaning and not able to respond to the call taker. Prince William County units were dispatched, and I went ahead and marked en route from Fauquier County. After this call was handled, I responded to assist Anderson, where an arrest of a juvenile took place. While on a domestic call, the town received 2 calls in town, one for a suspicious male flagging down traffic on Washington Street. Prince William County was unable to locate. The second call was an intoxicated male on Route 15 headed towards the Sheets, stumbling into traffic. Prince William County located the subject to handle it. While still handling the domestic, I was returning to town from transporting a juvenile into Manassas. The town got 2 separate calls from 3 individuals, possibly going through vehicles, peering into windows. As you're aware, the county has been dealing with this issue in a neighborhood right outside of town, and we have been as well, to include 1 vehicle attempted theft. I had a delayed response time, and by the time I arrived, the male subjects were gone, or a GOA, gone on arrival. This means that from 1700 to 2200 hours, the town had 4 pending calls that were not able to either respond or get there in a timely manner due to being tied up with other calls. And that's an end of quote as well. I'll also note that the same officer arrested a DUID, which is driving under the influence of drugs, on March 7th, 2024, at 7:54 p.m. After completing the blood draw, associated paperwork, and magistrate process, the officer was able to return to patrol duties at 1:40 a.m. That's 5 hours and 46 minutes later. This time frame is peak hours for impaired drivers, and there was no HPD presence in town. Events such as these do not happen every day, but the trend clearly indicates that the pendulum is swinging, so more time spent on casework and reports than conducting preventive patrol. And then if you notice on page 6, if you do have in front of you, the graph below indicates the time involved per calls. And so what I've put there is basically just an average. So when you see the first block or the first bar, you see DIP, which stands for drunken public, then DUI, trespassing, unusual occurrence, traffic enforcement, alarm, domestic, and so on and so on and so on. Now keep in mind those are just averages. We just recently had a runaway juvenile, which we spent about 36 hours straight working on. So, obviously we're well above the average in minutes, but at the end of the day, you're not going to spend 36 hours on every juvenile issue. Furthermore, these figures do not include court time, high complexity calls for service, such as fraud, larceny, burglary, or crime scene processing. There is another aspect to look at when considering these 2 full-time positions. That is the safety of our officers. We rely on Prince William County Police Department to assist us as needed, and we also assist them. Prince William County Police have a large daily call volume. Emergency assistance from them is readily available. However, there have been occasions when they're too inundated with calls to assist us. This is a safety risk for our officers. The county sends 2 or more officers to answer domestics. We send 1. And why? Because that's what we got. The below chart indicates the number of calls for service that Prince William County, this is page 7, Police Department responded to assist our agency in the last 6 months. And I spoke with Councilman Passanello, and I wanted to be able to break this down a little better as to backing us up and actually answering the calls. But when I look back through the daily rundowns, I wasn't able to differentiate sometimes. And so I didn't feel like I could give a truly accurate number. But obviously, you know from that last email that there was 4 calls that we didn't answer, that Prince William County had to answer. So I just stuck with what was in my monthly reports as far as backup from outside agencies. But I have changed our stat sheet so we can reflect the amount of calls that have to be answered by Prince William, not just the calls that are responded to assist us on ours. Lastly, scheduling issues have been on the increase. 4 of our 5 part-time officers have full-time jobs outside their work here. These officers take time off their full-time jobs to cover shifts. We always find a way to cover the shift, but sometimes it's a real struggle to make things work. And so with that being said, finding also, just to add to that, finding officers, qualified officers that can work on a part-time basis that really have nothing else to do is really hard to find, no matter what you're paying them. Usually anybody that would be available to work part-time is already retired, and police officers are blue-collar people. We get a job after we leave a job, so another full-time job. So it's really difficult to say, I can't load up 20 guys and still be able to cover the shifts. So now you may ask yourself, how will funding 2 sworn FTEs meet our objectives? Let's first look at the objectives, missions, and strategic initiatives that are listed. And the town's mission, provide residents, businesses, and visitors with public safety, public services in a physically prudent and socially responsible way. The Initiative 1, foster community and economic well-being, practice good governance, foster community engagement, and fund the future. The Haymarket Police Department's mission statement states, the officers of the Haymarket Police Department will defend the Constitution of the United States, Commonwealth of Virginia. We will fairly and diligently work to provide the most professional law enforcement services to the citizens of Haymarket. Now, these objectives have been around for a long time, and now these aren't all of them, but these are some that I highlighted. Keep crime low through ensuring constant patrolling presence. Ensure we maintain less than a 5-minute response time to calls for service. Ensure we maintain 24/7 coverage. Ensure we maintain a pedestrian-friendly town through traffic enforcement. Ensure we maintain a constant presence at nighttime businesses checks to thwart criminal activity and keep our officers safe. Funding these two positions will provide us the resources to accomplish the town's missions, the town's initiatives, along with the police department's objectives. We will be keeping pace with the town and county's growth, not falling behind. And then I want to get into the deployment. Obviously, we would put one on each shift. We are also seeking to promote 2 sergeants, 1 for each shift. And then if you look at the page 9, that is our current staffing, and that's just a 1-week snapshot out. I talked to the town manager. We wanted to do 2 weeks, but I think it got a little confusing when I tried to put it together. So obviously, when you look at our current scheduling, when you see one shift working 2 days, the next week they work 5 days. So don't think that they just have to work 2 days every week. But what I want you to look at is the highlighted areas. When you look at the bottom, on Mondays, you'll see 13 hours with that bottom line, 13 hours without on-duty, in-town supervision. And then it goes across 9, 14, 14, 16, 24, and 24. These 2 positions having 2 sergeants, we can reduce it greatly if you look at page 10, where you see that right across there, we're reducing it by 50% or more on most days. So then our officer not only has somebody to back them up, but they actually have supervision on site or in town that can direct. Obviously, Lieutenant and I are always available for phone calls, but there's a lot of times in the midst of things, you don't have time to pick up the phone. And even our pursuit policy reverts back. If there's not an on-duty in-town supervisor on duty, then you revert to Prince William County's supervision. In other words, if they say discontinue, you discontinue, because that's the only immediate supervision that can be out there. So you can see that is a bit of an issue, and those 2 positions would greatly decrease. Moving on to page 11, you'll get out of a lot of my presentation, but you'll get into the simple facts. So on our salaries and regular wages, we're looking for the 3% COLA increase that Roberto's already talked about. 1.5% increase for the 2 sergeants position, which only equates to $3,216. The additional 2 full-time employees, and then take into consideration my presentation. And I know how Councilman Ramirez loves pie charts, so I threw them back in there for her. So you can see the breakdown on where the money is actually going. And then if you look to the bottom of the page, that is a breakdown of the per officer cost, which includes everything from the fringe benefits to the equipment, to the holiday pay, VRS, everything that they would need to actually get them outfitted. Keeping in mind that wouldn't be a yearly cost. The equipment, once it's purchased and assigned, the following year we wouldn't need that. But I know that was one of the things that I think specifically Councilman Pansanello wanted to see was the out-the-door cost. I'll move on to page 12. So ultimately, we will be funding the future. We'll be practicing good governance, and we'll be fostering community engagement by being able to be out on the street and answer calls, along with benefiting the community and the economic well-being of Haymarket. So with this initiative, we accomplish all 4 of the town's strategic initiatives. The benefits to the town, will be that our officers will be safer, the citizens will be safer, the businesses will be safer, officers will not need to rush through reports to get back on patrol. We'll be able to maintain a high visibility to thwart crime. We'll be able to keep our response time low. We will reduce overtime and part-time expenses by using the sergeants to cover shifts, call-outs, and TDOs. Our officers will have more on-duty, in-town supervision, and we will be able to keep Haymarket a pedestrian-friendly town. In summation, we need these positions to better serve the public, protect our citizens, protect our businesses, protect our officers, and keep Haymarket pedestrian friendly. I'm going to go ahead and go through the rest of the budget. I'm sure that I'll get hit with questions on that as well as some other things, but obviously you'll look when you get to line item 0003, the OT premium, you'll see a decrease of $6,000. That is factoring in the 2 FTEs. When you get to wages OT select, I think we have reestablished ourselves with the DMV grant. Seppo and I are in a constant talk with each other. We communicate almost weekly, either via email or on the phone, and he seems to be happy with what we're doing. So I think that what the town had put forth to fill that gap when we didn't have the grant can go down to Neil. I don't think we need to do that. I think that's what the DMV grant is for, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. The holiday pay, just a small adjustment there to accommodate for the FTEs. Then when you get to part-time, you'll see a $27,000 reduction in part-time. Obviously, there's a lot of things that, no matter how many people you throw at a situation, you can't solve with that. No matter how many full-time positions you throw at, you can't do that. We still have events and those special moments where we're still going to need part-timers to come out. Page 15 is just the breakdown with the exception of the top 2 portions, which the DMV grant addresses, and then the part-time administration fee, which is again at 0. Roberto said earlier about the small increase with the DMV grant. That's just in the wages. We did also ask for equipment as well. Legal services on page 16, increment increase, and then line item 0032, computers, internet, and webs. That would again help with the FTEs. No change in postage. $1,500 increase on 0034 telecommunications because of the FTEs. And then the next 3 line items are all static. Now, I do need to talk about page 18 just for a second, especially under annual dues and subscriptions. So with the FTEs, there's a couple of different things to look at here. With the FTEs, we actually need to pick up some more tasers, some more body-worn cameras, which is more licenses, which is more storage space. We also are looking at updating some of our aging tasers as well. I am in negotiation with Axon to do a little bit better on this, and I think we can do a little bit better on this. Sometimes getting the numbers from them is pretty slow. We've been working on this for over 6 weeks and still don't really have the numbers that we want. So this number is going to be in flux when you look at the Axon tasers and the Axon body-worn cameras. The Academy dues are pretty static, and then you'll see also a Cruiser dash cam addition. And I was going to show it, but for the sake I knew that tonight would be a long meeting, and I didn't want to add to it. But the reason I came to this decision is the last pursuit that we had, which involved Officer Burgoon, he was able to get out with the vehicle before it took off. But if the vehicle had just taken off, it wrecked out down here at the circle, but it still was able to go 2 miles after that and stop for a short time. Officer Burgoon got out at that point and tried to get them to get out of the vehicle. His body cam caught none of the vehicle, nothing. There was not one thing. If that vehicle had run without stopping and he would have gotten involved in a shootout at that location and, God forbid, been killed, we would have had 0 information on the car or on the people that was in it because his body cam did not catch any of the interaction at the circle. So it was very disconcerting to me thinking about that aspect, and I thought that we probably should have dash-mounted cameras in our vehicles to it also helps with a lot of transparency and issues on traffic stops and training, but it definitely captures the rest that the body cam doesn't. And then the big issue, which is just presented itself, I did advise Finance Committee and the Town Manager Roberto about it, but on Thursday of last week at 1 p.m., I was contacted by our records management system provider, which is Soma out of Texas. We've had a fine relationship with Soma, and we've been paying $1,250 a year for the services that we need. Obviously, with any RMS provider, you can get modules modules on top of modules, and pay an exorbitant amount of money if you need that, if your department needs that. What we need is the baseline. But after 2 months ago, they had advised that everything was static and they was not looking at any increase this year. Well, they changed their mind and called me on Thursday and advised that their new cost was going to be $15,000 a year, which is well over a 1,500% increase for a baseline system. So not really going to settle for that, quite frankly, to put it strongly. So there is 25 other offices in Virginia that uses Soma. I've already started working with one of them, which is Occoquan. And we've been kind of dividing and conquering on the other vendors that we can seek out. I've also had a conversation with Chief Newsham, his chief of staff, and their IT director to see if we can piggyback onto the county's RMS system. That would be the ultimate way to go, and is actually where I wanted to see the department go, but a year from now. Because then we'd be integrated with them, we'd be able to see at least their information on contacts, they would be able to see ours, and it would just be much better working together and moving forward. But now we've kind of been thrust into a last-minute thing, keeping in mind that the Soma contract expires on April 1st. So they gave me 10 days' notice on the amount that they were going to up that fee. So we're working on a solution. And I feel very favorable in speaking with Chief Newsom and the IT director specifically that we can come to a solution. The problem is when do we come to that solution? There's 3 factors that I have to look at. One was, will they say yes or no? And to me, they've said yes. 2 is, what's the cost benefit? What is that system going to cost? And then 3 is, if it's something that we feel is beneficial at the good cost, what is an implementation date line? Because we have to report every month to the Virginia State Police, every month. Now, I can probably buy us a couple of months in speaking to Virginia State Police. I'm still waiting on a call back from them. But I want to make sure that we're able to implement this program if we go that route. If not, we'll have to seek something else. So far, the one quote I have gotten back is from Southern Software, which is an RMS provider that I used in Winchester. And their build-out cost is about $21,000, but then it's $3,300 a year after that. So after 2 years, we would actually be back into saving money again. But that is a work in progress. But I wanted to make sure that the council, full council, knows tonight that we are working on that. But I cannot give you a solid number, and I do not know where we're going to be on the RMS thing tomorrow or the next day. But I can tell you we're working forward to a solution. So that's the little tidbits in that. I am going to work line item 0040 over the next week or 2 in these budget discussions, and I will get you a good baseline for it. But right now we're looking at worst case scenario on all that. And then moving on, office supplies, a very small increase. Fuels that we feel that we can stay static with. I have looked at EIA, and some other things, and it's all over the map. I mean, you just as well throw a dart on the board as to figure out what gas is going to be this time next year. Vehicle supplies is static, uniforms is static, equipment rental is static, and capital outlay is static. So that's the nuts and bolts as quick as I could give it to you. So, Mayor, back to you.
Yeah, you're talking about the fuels and the maintenance and the uniforms being static. So most of the tools that the new officers would need are built into a different line item. They're not in here.
No, we can work that. That line item is a very flux item. Some years you might be heavy, and some years you might not light. You might be light. You don't really know what you're going to spend each year. You might have a lot of equipment break, or you might not. But I looked at it and feel like leaving it static, that we could make it to where we needed to make it with the new FTEs, if approved. Again, if approved.
Mm-hmm. And you have down here in notes purchasing 2 new vehicles per the CIP.
Yes.
Are these added vehicles, or are these replacement vehicles?
They'll end up being replacement vehicles, but we've already established that with our 5-year plan. And we're not doing anything extra that we didn't already plan to do. We feel like with the current fleet and then holding on to the plain white SUV, that we'll still, if the 2 new FTEs are approved, we will still be able to move forward with the fleet that we have and the plan that we have. The one caveat might be that we might need to add 1 vehicle to the end of the plan, not 2. So I think we've ran our numbers pretty good, and I think we can stay pretty static where we're at.
Okay, and this won't impact the take-home policy or anything like that?
No, sir. Everything would be static as with that as well.
Okay, anybody else have any questions?
Joe? I didn't know if your hand was up or not. I saw it go down.
He's smiling, that's a good sign.
So I'll be the first, I can go.
Oh,
So one of the couple of things that you mentioned, Chief, are can we afford it, or where does the money come from, right? So Roberto and the finance liaison team, based on what's being proposed, which is an increase of 32.7%, I think if my calculation is correct, that will put us about, the public safety total amount will end up being about 39.6% of our proposed budget.
Correct.
So any concerns? Where does the money come from? Right? Can we afford it?
Yes. I mean, this is a conversation we have had, I believe, in this council, well, not the specific council, but the majority of this council, when we knew that Crossroads was coming online. This was always a discussion. This has also been a reason why, even 2 years ago, my concern has always been brought about the real estate rate. Though, this council has been able to reduce the rate and even give a refund. I believe it was on record, and even when Councilman Ware at the time, argued that thought. I can tell you that by looking at this year's assessments, even though it seems like in the lump sum a big increase, individually the increase is not much. It's about under $100 on average what you'll see existing residents. You'll see an increase for the year. We're getting to that point too, that the real estate assessments may change, but not by much. Though the past couple of years we have seen a huge increase. It comes a time too where the homes are there, the homes are there. The homes are longer there, the assessments won't increase as much. But yes, is it doable? Yes, this budget shows it's doable. Not considering the businesses are coming online, but also with the thought that keeping a flat tax rate, not with a reduction.
Maybe I'm not understanding what I'm seeing here, but based on what I'm seeing, it looks like our expenses are higher than our net income. Right.
Our expenses are matching our revenue.
If you add the 155,000 to it, right?
Correct.
From our surplus and some other things, but if you look at the exact increase and decrease of our expenses in comparison to our net income, there are some things that I don't think we should consider as expenses or net income that I'm seeing here, right? Yes, at the end of the day, balances out, right? But based on what I'm seeing, again, you can correct me, I can meet with you, but I think our expenses are significantly higher than our income, right? Again, I know this is a balanced budget, things are working out, but anyways, I do have concerns over that, but that's all the questions I have right now.
Tracy Lynn?
I don't really have a question as much as a statement of, can we afford not to do it when it comes to the safety of our citizens, our businesses, our officers, and priding ourselves on community policing, that interaction and that engagement? To me, it's vitally important that we make it happen. So that's my statement.
I concur.
I was on the losing end of the vote several years ago to fulfill the position, and I've been touting this all along, that we're behind. We're behind our capital investment, we're behind in our investment in police personnel. I understand the prudence and the fiscal responsibility to try to balance it, but it should be, I agree that we should be figuring out how we make it. We can't afford not to. 34% increase in our population. Our population will be here before we had the time to catch up. Not to mention the 200 people that are staying in our hotels, which was maximum capacity, but we have a transient population on top of the resident population that we're having to serve, not to mention the folks that are just outside our doors. So I figured if we have to make this work and figure out how to make it work. Great presentation, Chief. I appreciate the backup and the statistical data to support it. That was certainly a factor that we had considered before, was it 4 years ago, 3 years ago now? But I think this is something particularly that we need to figure out how to make it work. And I would assume that there would be an overwhelming support from the community. I don't believe they've daylighted. Maybe that's for discretionary purposes. We've not daylighted the issues that we've had with calls for service, not supporting it. I would be surprised if we were to daylight that there would be concerns from the community that we have this lack of staffing. So, thanks.
Question for you, Chief. And again, I echo that. Thank you very much for putting the presentation together. I did print it out. I read the whole thing. I tried to hear it in your voice as well while I read it, so it was fun. Question I had for you was regards to the response time. You report regularly to us and let us know what it is for when we respond to a call, and with the goal being under 5 minutes. If we do have to have Prince William respond, what's the difference in the response time?
For emergency calls, say if we were in a fight, it's nominal. They're quick. If it is not per se that extreme, it can be very extended. I will just give you one case in point. I was in a meeting. One of my guys was in court, and the other one was on a call. And I would come back into the office, and there's a pretty irate woman in the foyer. Start talking to her, and she was involved with a disorderly conduct at a local business and had been waiting an hour for response from a Prince William officer because we weren't available. Now, I did not know this was going on, but she'd been waiting an hour, and she finally got so frustrated that she walked to the PD from the business. That is not an everyday occurrence, but when it comes to non-emergency calls, which, again, that has the propensity to be an emergency call. The disorderly is like one step down away from an assault. Usually disorderly escalates into an assault, right? But also, Prince William has their minimum standards. They won't dispatch that call until they have 2 people to go. Even if they got 1 available, they won't dispatch that call until they get 2. Because it's a safety risk for the officer. So I'm just saying that it's greatly increased, and it can be very, very marginalized depending on the date, the time, how inundated with calls they are, if we have that response. So again, not taking anything away, every time that we've been in a scuffle, a fight, an altercation, jolly on the spot. But on those instances, it's usually a wait. And then if it's just like, say, an informational say that you got scammed out of some money, we can really get into extended waits for somebody to show up and take that report.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I echo, what some of my colleagues have said. I'll be honest, you see the increase in costs. I had the same question. How do we afford it? How do we do this? And, looking at if we were to lower a tax rate, would we still be able to do something like this? But I tend to believe I haven't seen a material increase in the size of our existing police force in several years that I've been able to visibly observe as a resident of the town. But knowing, again, as my colleague brought up, we've had a pretty significant increase in both businesses and residences over the past couple of years. I would think that we would need something. So I appreciate you coming in with the statistics and the backup for this, because it's extremely helpful for me.
2 things I wanted to just add to your takeaway real quick is that a lot of times people look for that spike, right? They look for the spike in the numbers. There wasn't a spike here. If you look at the slow growth of the town, and then you look at the slow growth, and those reports, I keep them as far back as I've been statting them. So you can look at every number as far back as you want to. And you don't see the giant roller coaster hill all of a sudden pop up. You can see the constant flow. And that's why I try to compare the fact that look at January, February of 2 years ago. Now look at it last year. Now look at it this year. So I think that goes with it. And then secondly, if you're seeing that spike, then we're too late.
Yep.
So, and I would echo. I mean, you last few weeks you've been giving us kind of the weekly reports. Thank you for those. Those have been enlightening, to put it very mildly. To see some of the stuff that has been going on, it puts it in perspective.
Yes, sir. No problem.
Mary?
Thanks. I really appreciated the detail and lengths at which you went to explain your rationale. I think even before Crossroads broke ground, we knew that we were going to need a lot more officers. And I've just been patiently waiting for you to ask because I respect you as our law enforcement professional. I would argue that as a resident and law enforcement wife, like I want to see more. I would love to add 3, 4, but that's just my perspective and what I would like to see in my town. And I think that you've been prudent. I think you've been thoughtful, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Okay, Joe.
Hey, Chief, I wanted to stick around and listen to your presentation. I appreciate you sending it out. I think it's been very helpful for our discussion going forward. I'm at the point of saturation and regression at 10:15 at night since 3 o'clock this morning. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm certain I'm going to have a bunch of questions for you just for clarity.
Yes, sir.
And let me just put it out here now. We've talked about this for a while, and we tasked you with coming up with the data so that we could make an informed decision. I think you've certainly gone in that direction without doubt. One of my concerns is we also, as residents of the town of Haymarket, we also contribute, I'm trying to figure out the percentage, but about 21%, almost 22% of what we pay to the county every year in real estate taxes goes to public safety. And that includes fire and EMS and all of that. So one of my concerns has always been, how do we leverage the money that we send to the county to the benefit of the town? And so that's one of the challenges that I think we face, and you and I have talked about this a little bit in the past.
Yes, sir.
And I'm just kind of putting it out there so everybody understands that those are one of the areas that we're going to be looking to, I think, to leverage that money that we send to the county every year. I think that the report is pretty clear, and one of the areas that I'm very, very concerned about, is visibility. That's a deterrent factor. As a father of a law enforcement agent, I know about that myself, and I'm always concerned about that. That helps to deter nefarious actions. Plus, I think it's important to your approach for community policing. So I would like to hear a little bit more going forward about how that will get handled within the town itself. I mean, the community events are great. They foster respect. They foster understanding, all of those issues. But I'm more focused on the town residents themselves. So I'd be curious to see going forward when we have more discussions on this before we vote on the budget, where that can take us. In the meantime, I'm going to probably go get some rest and reread your report and come back, I guess, at our next meeting with some additional questions, if that's okay.
That's perfectly fine, Joe. Appreciate you sticking around. Thank you.
Okay.
Alexander?
Yeah, so in line, maybe, I don't know if what I'm about to say is the same thing, similar to what Joe mentioned in relation to, like everybody else in the county, we pay property tax, the same percentage, what have you, right? And they are protected, right, by Prince William County Police, right?
Correct.
So for the longest time, yes, I understand fully the advantage of having local police in terms of response time and so forth, right? And I've always thought that if there is any gap or deficiency on our end here, that the county police can be called upon to assist, provide assistance, right? I'm sure if one of our officers needs assistance, can call a backup, right?
Correct.
So I am a rational guy, right? Just because somebody says it's the right thing to do, I just, I like to think through it. I like to justify it, right? So based on what I've mentioned, right, I'm trying to figure out why is it necessary to hire I've read through this, right? Knowing that we have a county police, once again, we're paying taxes like anybody else, right? We should be having the same protection or services as they're providing anybody else in the county. That's my perspective, right?
And you do. They get the same response time
Yeah.
in the county that we do here. Here you have a personalized police service. You have people that have knowledge base of the surroundings and the people that live here and how to interact with them. You get that same response that you do that the county does, basically is what I'm saying. So keep in mind that we're fully staffed. Prince William is not. We're not the heavy side of the county. The East End is. So if you're the chief and you have 500 people to deploy and 90% of your call volume is in the east side, where are you going to deploy your people? No matter how many taxes are paid by the citizens of Haymarket or the outlying areas here. That's the way it's going to be. So if that's what you're looking to, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get continued delayed response time. Now, if there's a day where Chief Newsom becomes fully staffed, that may very well change, but that day is not today. And yes, we can call for backup, but that's usually when we're in a fight, and then it's too late. Our officer's already engaged in something that if we had 2 or 3 people there, he would not be engaged in. And I know you're a rational guy, but I don't know if you've ever been in a fight, right? I can tell you it's not pleasant. It's not what you see on TV, and it has extenuating circumstances. I will protect my men, and this is the best way to do it, because I cannot not expect the county to be here for every call. I'm not their chief, not their commander. So that's just the way it's going to be. That's why I'm asking for these positions.
I understand. And I don't know about the response time. I mean, that's crazy. We're waiting for an hour. I don't know if that's common. I would like to believe that's not common, right? I don't know what was happening on that specific day, but for 1 hour to get a response, that's just.
I can't speak to that. That would be something that Chief Newsom would have to speak to. But again, if you look at that trend in a lot of cities or a lot of big populated areas, they're going away. Matter of fact, now you can call in a report if you have a larceny. No police will ever call or come, but you get your report number for the insurance company. That is not personalized police service.
Okay. One additional question. So, and again, I don't know how long I've been on the town council, right? I am surprised. Maybe I was expecting, right, during your reporting and so forth, and I think there was one question that the mayor asked. I didn't think we were in a situation where we go from, I would have maybe expected 1 additional full-time officer, right, instead of going all the way to 2. Right? Again, I'm just trying, what happened? I didn't notice this level of urgency up to this point to go from part-time officers to 2 additional full-time. Maybe it sounds like there was maybe prior conversation with other town council members, but I'm just trying to understand how we progressed to this point.
Well, you have a 7-day period that you cover in a week. So you bring on 1 person. How many days do you cover? If you look at the current schedule, on 1 week you cover 2 days. That's it. 2 days, you put that 1 person out for 2 days. The following week, you get them 5 days. Well, that's a good week. but you're still not covering all 7 days. And how do you deploy that man? Do you hire somebody with the propensity to say, hey, congratulations, you now work for the Haymarket Police Department. You get to work from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Thursday, Friday, and Saturdays. Congratulations. That's your permanent shift because that's your high call volume. Not sure of any police officer I know that was going to volunteer to give up every weekend of their life to work here or any other place. So how does one person fit into a deployment scheme? They really don't, because you still have a small percentage of the time covered.
Councilman Bayanet, on the finance portion of it, when Crossroads came across back in 2018, I believe, and the then administration this was a topic that was always brought up, and it was known. When that mayor and council approved this project, it was always brought up, even through public hearings. So I think the need of it was always there, and we always knew it was going to happen. But obviously, it's coming sooner than we thought. We're busy. Again, it shows that during the pandemic, again, I've said this more than once, we were one of the few towns that did not lose a business due to closing the doors or anything, because of, we did well. But this conversation has been always there since 2018, once this project was proposed, and once it went official, it was always there. So it was always known that it was eventually going to happen. Just to address that, it wasn't something that came out of left field. It's something that we've all known. As a town manager could address too, she was there part of the planning. That was part of the conversation pieces when that plan was being proposed.
Thanks.
You want to rescind to Mary? Okay, Mary.
Thank you. I just wanted to touch base about the comment about having conversations outside of the dais. That has certainly not happened, but I do have eyeballs, and I see that officers are not driving by my house as regularly as they used to. I don't see them on the street when I'm driving through town, so it's through pure observation that I see that we need an increase in officers. It is also with my eyeballs that I see an increase in traffic and the hazards it pays to pedestrians. How many of our road signs have been hit in the middle of the road? Eyeballs. It has nothing to do with side conversations, so I wanted to address that right here, right now. I don't appreciate that. But I think that it's important that we fully staff our police department, and I think that he's been prudent and patient. So that's where that comes from.
Two things. One, Councilman Bianchi, I think the value add had to be with two. The one didn't make much sense. The two had sort of the maximum impact. That's how I read it to be, with what Chief just explained. I've heard about the argument about monies that are paid to the county. I'm just concerned our ability to leverage that and compel the county to increase that service or fulfill those positions. Confident that Councilman Weir, put him after something, he'll go after it, but I don't know that he has the ability to significantly change either the level of service or the nature of the service that serves the town. If we can better leverage those monies or that percentage in the future, I think that's great. I just don't know how quickly we can reverse that or influence that. Does that make sense? So our ability to sort of to influence our support from the county police on the outside, I think, is limited versus what we can control internal to us, which is our ability to add staff. That's the way I look at it. So.
One thing I don't know if it's going to be possible for us to look into, but if there is some sort of a report that we can get from the county in terms of their presence in this side of town in comparison to other, parts of the town. Something that I've always thought is maybe they're intentionally creating some sort of a vacuum in this area, knowing that there's a local police presence, right? By design, yeah, intentionally. By design, whatever you want to call it, right? But again.
I'm just going to say one final thing. You've done such an incredible job at tracking since becoming our chief within our town. And going in, it was an assessment. I'd much rather get ahead than be on the back end of something significantly happening that would affect this town for a very long time.
Yes, ma'am.
So it really does speak volumes to me when you say there's a study And if we've hit that pike, or that spike, it's too late, right? That's putting us behind the 8 ball.
Correct.
So I would just reiterate your due diligence in your reporting and your tracking. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I see your hand, Joe.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a final comment before I sign off. At the end of the day, we're going to provide our police department the resources and equipment they need. I made that commitment years ago. I think that's paramount to make sure that they do their job effectively and safely. So I think we can all agree that we are going to make that commitment to ensure that they have their resources. I think on the other hand, we have to be cognizant of the budget issues that are growing, right? We have to be aware of the growth in staff numbers, both PD and administration, which drives a lot of the additional costs, not just salaries, it's all the add-on costs. So we just have to be aware that as we go forward, and as we've seen in the presentation tonight by Roberto, we've seen some significant increases in VRS and other fringe elements. So, just have to take that into account. Those are the pressures. And we have to balance all of those pressures out. I don't think personally we do it on the backs of the residents. I think we do it equally for all in this town, not just the residents, but the businesses and what have you. So that's just my observation. I agree. We're not getting the visibility that I think the chief would like to provide. And that is a big challenge. And, if we have to do something with manpower, staff power, to be politically correct, then we have to really take a hard look at that. So, Chief, let me ask you one question now. Sure. If I read the report right, I think you right now have the equivalent of 8.5 FTEs.
Well, we have 6 FTEs currently.
Right.
But if we add 2, yes, we would have 8, which also includes me and the lieutenant.
All right. So we have 6 today. And I noticed on the part-time, we have, 5.5, is that correct?
With
Am I
5,
reading that right?
5 part-timers. We have 5 part-timers.
5.5, is that right?
No, 5 part-time employees.
Yeah, 5 part-time employees,
Mhm.
okay. So 5 part-time is the equivalent of, 2.5 FTEs, roughly?
I guess you could put it that way, yes, correct.
Yeah, yeah. So is the, one of those half FTEs is, you still have the clerk, right?
The admin assistant?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Apologies.
yes. No, that's okay. Go ahead. Mhm. Yes, sir.
So one of the areas that I noticed in the report that's a challenge is the paperwork aspect of the officer's daily responsibility. But that's not something the admin can do, correct?
Correct. Now, they would have to write their own reports. Now, the admin can take care of filing and making sure that, it's properly placed, the case management side of it. But they have to write their own reports and then, obviously fill in the blanks from information side.
Exactly, because they have to validate that report. They have to sign
Correct.
who they are to, make it authentic.
Correct. Mhm.
Right. So I'm just putting it out there because those are some of the things, people might wonder about.
Mhm.
And frankly, that the admin has a responsibility that doesn't reach out to what the officers have to do every day.
Correct.
And so that's an important thing or distinction I think that needs to be made.
She's more of a records management after the fact.
Right. Exactly.
Yes, sir.
All right, like I said, I think I'm going to crash here, so I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Passanello.
Yes, Chief or Roberto, is it possible to get the exact total amount associated with bringing on, onboarding these 2 police officers? Because looking at this, I can see the salary increase, but included in that is the 3% COLA, VRS. You know, I can't attribute it to the two FTEs. Is it possible to?
If you go to page 11 at the bottom graph,
This is what you sent?
yes, sir. Yeah, it's sent on page 11.
Okay.
You'll see the price per officer out the door, $123,279.96, which also includes equipment to get them squared away and on the street.
About 246 total.
Correct, right on it, 246,559.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And then it has a pie chart there for the breakdown, where all the money, base salary, communications, IT, equipment, subscriptions, everything.
Does that include the reduction in the part-time or without?
No,
this
I
is-
kept that disparity
Okay,
difference
okay, all right.
on that. You can go to that line, those items and look, but it is not included in that.
So if you were to include that, it would be less than 246, basically, right? If you
Correct.
factor that in. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Okay, and my closing remarks, I like to try and pride ourselves on forming an organization that's more predictive than reactive. I'm still trying to do that with admin. Emily's doing a great job of that. But this is definitely showing signs of, sorry guys, this is definitely showing signs of stress in the system. The question is, can our budget support two? So that's up to us to figure out and juggle. But to handle what's projected and what's predicted, Chief has done a good job of identifying what these two would be doing and how they would fit in. But like I said, it boils down to how's our budget fit this. Hopefully it can fit them and we can work it out, and it will be a quality improvement, something that is hard to justify, right? Quality is hard to quantify. So,
Appreciate everybody's remarks, and thank you for the time you gave me for the presentation. Appreciate it.
okay, Roberto, any closing remarks?
We still have a few line items to go.
Oh, we still, oh, yeah. So there are closing remarks then, huh?
So, I'm gonna try to go through these line items as quickly as possible, but definitely ready to answer questions. Moving past that, line item on page 5, line item 4320001. This is the trash removal contract. Obviously, this is in RFP phase, reviewing the proposals. I can tell you this, that one of the, out of the 3 vendors, one of them was significantly high, to the point that we couldn't even consider it. But we are going to review it as part of it, the packet. The number here is if what we were to go with our existing service with our existing vendor. That number came up quite high. I know the discussions we'll have about this, but to kind of give you kind of an idea of some of this cost, Emily and I and Clark have asked around with people, that have services, they pay services outright themselves. You're looking anywhere between $45 to $49 a month. And the proposals we have are ranging from $28 to $31 to $32. So there's a significant savings that a resident will have by going through this, obviously because of the mass numbers of units that we servicing. And even doing a quick math, even at one of the higher ones, we won't even get to the 300 mark, or even close to what an individual would pay with the annual increases per the contracts. But again, this will be a discussion that we'll be having, but we wanted to go ahead and place a number there. The 235 also address, I'm not sure if some of council is aware, we do have a few homes that lie between the gated community in Piedmont. There's an agreement between the town and the HOA there that they will provide the service to continue service for those homes. We just pay for those specific homes, which is about 333 quarterly. So we've always got that budgeted, as well as a little buffer for events. If we need to get trash service for Haymarket Day, we get a dumpster. Items like that, we keep that in the trash service.
I think you're referring to Parks of Piedmont.
Parks of Piedmont,
I don't
I'm
think they're
sorry.
gated though, right? No?
They're not.
They are not gated.
Oh, okay, all right.
No,
Yeah,
right.
but they're,
Yeah.
they're within the town limits,
They're in the
right?
town limits,
Okay.
yeah.
Because the gated Piedmont's on the other side, and I was like, that was a little
Apologize
confusing.
for that.
So I just clarified, sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that is what we have, that line item, and again, we'll be discussing that as we go along further in the budget. The next line item is the increase in pest control. Now that the town has a full-time maintenance coordinator, he's able to have more eyes and more visibility and able to see these properties owned by the town, to notice, rodent problems, and pest problems. So that is to address the increase. Again, that service has increased. Contractors are increasing their prices. The street the snow removal, line item 4310004, just increasing that, as discussed with the town council and town manager to address that. That's a number that may or may not be used depending on the weather, but better to be prepared, especially now considering that I believe the town is going to be cleaning the main street for the residents.
Hey, Roberto, on that one, did we say 15,000 before? I just missed the change, or?
I believe 15 was a discussion, but I'm not sure if it's a 15 or 10 would be the right number.
So it's taking a recommendation on which number?
Right, right.
Thanks.
Okay, the next line item, the museum. Town manager wanted to move some of the office supplies funds and go into the advertisement. This is due with just, trying to get continued usage of the museum and have that portion there to be useful for them. The engineering line item 8110003, we have been made aware by our engineer that the fees will be going up this year. This is in hopes to address some of those potential fees. The reason why the increase is because we will have a lot of town-owned projects that she'll be working on more than usual. So we hope this will suffice that need for her fees. Moving down to the non-departmental, the debt. As you guys are aware, this year we paid 2 out of the 3 debts fully paid, but we still have 1. This is to continue making that payment. Next fiscal year, you'll see another one-time payment that'll be done early on in the year, and the town will be debt-free once that is completed. Because we're on this line item, just be aware that the town manager and I have met with VMO Vaco to give us a benchmark report. The last time that was done was in 2018, but now that there's these projects that are coming online or potentially coming online, we want to get a better gauge from them as to how what kind of debt the town can afford to go into. They'll give those scenarios out. They will be here to present once the report is done, and have that discussion with council.
That's prior to adopting the budget, or?
It'll be ongoing. Hopefully, I think we're hoping to have it in the May meeting. Is when we're hoping to have them come in. So it gives the ability to the council to address them.
Thank you.
94102. That is, again, where the proffers from the Van Meter project are being used to address the project, the architectural engineering fees for the park project. The next line items you see removing is the park sidewalk. That's with the hopes that everything will be completed by June 30th, so we will not have those expenditures to pay for.
Roberto, I'm sorry, man. I can't save it to save my life. So go back to park real quick. If we wanted to move additional monies to facilitate the park project, pavilion and the bathrooms, how best to incorporate that? Do we bring it over in the CIP, or what's the best?
You can ask me tonight to bring more over the proffers, and I could do that for you and present it to a revised budget on the agenda for Monday's meeting to you guys to start reviewing. We can have the discussion, and I could make it work, yeah. The point of this meeting is that if there's any suggestions you guys want to see, we could work on it or start, thinking about it, so.
Is there an easy way to ballpark what a pavilion and the bathrooms might cost, or?
I think we had an estimate, right? A comparison.
General estimates.
Okay. Oh, based on the,
Yeah.
okay, the later ones.
And just to give you some context, right now I'm proposing 75,000, but in actuality, what we have is 75,000 out of the 144,000 that we have
Okay.
as proffers right now.
And then we still have either ARPA funds or,
We do have ARPA funds. Right now we have a little bit over 1.7 million. But obviously, if we use once the park sidewalk is completed, that will be cut pretty much in a little bit under half.
okay.
But how interests are working, once it goes down under $1 million, it will reduce the rate, but it'll still be high enough that we'll be getting some substantial monies back.
So as you know, I appreciate you talking me through it earlier, but we have proffer dollars, ARPA money, and potentially surplus funds that we could all
Correct.
pull from that. We just have to identify them out.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
So for town center, right? I'm trying to figure out when is a good time to start including expected expenses in relation to some of the initiatives that we've talked about, right? Such as the town center. I think there is some money in here for architectural engineering fees, right? Is that what all we are expecting to incur during this upcoming fiscal year? Same thing with the park. I know there was a talk about maybe it's too early about acquiring a piece of property to convert it into a parking lot, right? When do we start including that into our budget as we?
So the two projects you're talking about, we won't be able to do as a cash project. The town center will have, that's the reason why we're bringing in VACO to have that benchmark report, to analyze it and to make council aware how big of a loan we could get into without, with the current settings we have revenue wise. I can tell you this though, in talking to them, if we're going to look to get into a loan, reducing or eliminating the real estate tax would not be favorable from a bank's position. So things to think about, but yeah, we will have that, and this is the budget where, as far as the town center, I know right now the only thing we have really is to complete the final site plan. That's why you don't see a huge number. Once we go into construction, it would most likely have to be on a loan. Same thing with the park. We could do up to so much with cash in hand, but to fully execute a plan for a park, it would have to be in a loan. Prior councils, that's where they were kind of stuck at, deciding what project to go ahead forward with. At the time, we had the pedestrian projects we needed to complete per a VDOT grant. And then we also had that sidewalk here that we completed this council. But in 2018, I believe the analysis informed us that we could only do one. We couldn't afford, without increasing taxes, we couldn't afford to do multiple projects. Though we are in a better position revenue-wise, to address your, earlier comment as to, the 155, the budget balances without the 155, because that 155 is only directly towards CIP. So if you remove that CIP, the 155,000 carryover, it's a balanced budget operationally. It works. But I guess the reason why this budget seems different is because council has always said they wanted to move on CIP. The town manager wants to move on CIPs. So we're making it that this budget is going to start implementing the work, the improvements that have been, for at least the past 7 years that I've been here, have not really been addressed. And town manager, when she was the planner, issues that we have still not addressed, and we're just starting to do so now. So in part in this budget, that's kind of what I did want to show, and we did spread it out on the CIP. As you can see, usually we would have 94108, a number of anywhere from 150 to 200 thousand budgeted, but there's no movement on it. If you look at it in prior years, FY 2021, FY 22, that was our town portion to complete a VDOT grant project. If you were to look up, majority of those funds that were done were because of a grant. So the reason why there's such a high carryover surplus is due to the fact that we haven't really executed any of the CIP items. And that's what we're trying to address in this budget and continue to do so. So to Councilman Bayan's point, yes, if I remove the 155, though it looks like the 155 I needed to balance, I really don't. For an operational balanced budget, we could remove it. But then you're saying that we're just going to continue not to address the maintenance or any CIP items. Because that 155 is solely to start working on those projects. And that surplus only exists because we haven't executed any of the bigger projects that we need to complete and begin work on.
Random follow-up to that, thank you. We're going to revisit the priorities of strategic planning, then we'll pull out the priority and the projects and how to fund it. Just randomly, would you know off the top of your head, the debt that we retired, how much, or retiring, how much is that per month that we're saving? Like 10 grand, 15 grand, is that probably not that?
I could get back to you on that, but yeah.
Does it sound low or sound high?
It's low. It's
Okay.
low.
Okay, thanks.
So going back to this, as you can see on the CIP line item, organically, we still have 93,630. 70,000 of it is coming from the interest gains from the monies we have set on saving on the accounts, on the money market accounts, and all the other accounts we do have. But the 155 is spread out in a way where it's very transparent to what project specifically it is going towards. Again, we can increase those funds if we needed to. We do have ARPA funds. We have many avenues to do so. But for the bigger projects, we will have to get into a loan debt obligation.
Yeah, again, we step back for a second. On blight mitigation, based on comments earlier, should we raise that? Is that going to be enough? It's enough? Okay, thanks.
Roberto?
Yes.
For the CIP line items, I was curious if council will entertain a debate on adding another line item for website improvements. I think that's something that our town wants to see and our staff could utilize and help us communicate better with our community at large.
I actually had that written down as where we're going to do that. So I was just going to.
Since it's kind of like a one-time thing, I think.
Can we use TOT money for that?
I don't see why we couldn't.
A good idea. I don't know if it needs to come from CIP or it come from.
Yeah, I don't know where it would come from,
We
but
could,
I would like us
I
to.
mean, we could use ARPA funds as infrastructure, we could, we did the one-time allowance, so other jurisdictions already use that to purchase vehicles to get one-time things out of the way, not reoccurring expenses. So we could use ARPA funds if we wanted to as well for that. Or we could increase our carryover surplus.
I'm okay with that.
I mean, I don't think it's much of a debate. I think it's something that we'd like to do.
I see it as part of the overall larger communication plan.
Yeah.
Priorities.
Yeah, and I had it on line item 1211016 with the computer, internet, and website servicing. Not certain. That was just a note on there for our website.
I just figured since it's a one-time thing, it could be its own line item and we can.
Yeah, may I ask council what number you guys are thinking to start with as a base number for?
Yeah, what websites?
I'm going big. See, I think we need a consultant to come in to redo it and set it up for us. And that includes recommendation of tools, purchase of the tools, whatever route we want to go. Because who do we have now? Granicus?
No, so we currently have Civic Plus, and
Yeah,
we did
I'm
just
not
tie
happy.
our minutes.
I'm not happy with it.
I understand. I think part of the issues we have today is not the product of Civic Plus. That was the previous owner of that company. I think it was Municode. Civic Plus bought them out recently. It was a poor design from the get-go. Your previous council rushed the project once they eliminated the position who was handling it, and then you saddled it with 3 people who are not website, authors. So all that to say, I do want everybody to keep in mind, we just transferred our agendas and minutes to Civic Plus. So we just signed on to that service because it talks to our website and that's going to be more user friendly. So I can get you rough numbers from Civic Plus. They have to do an upgrade on our website anyway with new, I guess it's software that they have.
Yeah, do they
Again,
have?
I don't know all the IT terms.
They actually have a different website software though, right? So we would be upgrading to that website software.
That's correct, and they have a lot of different examples, and they could come in, well, they're, I think, based out of California or somewhere, a little more exciting. So we would do all of it probably on the phone.
Yeah, because I was thinking that we would probably be looking at something like a $20,000 minimum just for having some type of consultant to come in and wanting to redo that. I mean, I was thinking it would probably, ballpark figure in my comfort zone is probably closer to 50.
We're still fitting out the rest of the electronics, right? Do we finish all our upgrades? Our IT or?
In what sense? I'm just talking about the web services.
I know, but how it talks or how it doesn't need to interact with. Never mind, move on.
Well, see, that'd be the consultant to do this. And like I said, when you're talking about manpower, you're talking about money.
I think 50,000 is probably, maybe even on the low end.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if we really do this the right way.
Yeah. So that's just something that needs to be tossed around. It's getting a little bit late to toss it around, but let's just ballpark it at 50 right now, huh?
Fun, yeah, but I do think it needs to be done.
Carryover? Is that what we said?
Do we want carryover, ARPA,
ARPA? I was
TOT?
thinking
ARPA?
We got what? We got 200 and something left on ARPA?
No, we will have essentially about 800,000 and some
800?
change. Yeah, so.
Do ARPA.
Let's not,
ARPA.
let's not
ARPA?
touch, let's not touch.
Yeah,
TOT.
No.
It's okay.
And Emily, were you
No.
still,
Stop touching my money, Marshawn.
were you still going to check with Civic Plus as like another alternative? Like what is available with Civic Plus for the website? Were you still going to come to us with that, or are we just going to go consultant route?
I can. So Civic Plus is already slated to get with me this spring to do a website update.
Okay.
So
guarantee
it's already,
Civic Plus.
I guarantee you Civic Plus probably has ProServe services too. So we would probably just go with their hourly rate for a ProServe with Civic Plus, right?
that's a term I'm not familiar
Professional,
with.
Professional
services
services.
team themselves, or they're going to have partners that are Civic Plus website developers.
Yeah, that could tell you the best way to design it and use their product.
Okay. Yep, we can reach out to them and ask them.
Thank you.
When do we put together requirements? Or do we let them decide, look at our website?
I'm gonna ask council to put together a committee and put the onus on council to tell us what you want. And it can be work session after work session after work session.
I volunteer, Ken.
Because the last administration, I wasn't here for all of it, but when they tried to change colors, that was kind of the end of the beginning, so.
I'll take it on.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll work with you on it.
I've had to do it from my office, so I'll take it on.
Sounds like a good champion.
Remember maroon and burnt orange everywhere.
Maroon and burnt orange.
I'm right there with you, man.
Emily,
We better focus on functionality instead of color.
That's the small town details we're gonna do. Bruno.
Okay, I will go back, work on these revisions. Councilman Bain, I'll do some revisions that you requested on the total on the proposed changes. The $50,000 increase for the website using ARPA. I will include it in the agenda, the new revised budget with these changes requested. I believe that I guess I'll ask officially if we got the directive to move forward with the real estate public notice for the flat tax rate, no higher than the current tax rate. I'll get that okay from you guys on Monday. And yeah, if there's any questions or Councilman Benya, if you want to talk more about this offline, we can definitely do that. My door's always open, so I'll be here the rest of the week.
Park money.
Park money, yes. That is something, yeah, we could talk about. I'll get council to proffer updates where we're at with it, so you guys can see that as well. Hopefully with that stuff.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, moving forward, I guess, maximum of the 1.11% for the property tax. I guess throw, do the high, medium, low. So like do, I guess, 1.11, 1.06, and 1.01.
Usually how the notice works is I'll have to show it the reduced, and then I'll have to show what the
okay.
equalizer will look like. So
Okay.
those rates we'll go with.
So yeah, just
There's a pretty
using that for
standard-
public announcement.
It's a pretty standard public announcement that we've been using and everyone uses, so we'll use
Okay.
that. Yep. But I'll get the official directive because I don't feel Councilman Panzanalo was here on Monday. We still would have time by Monday to promote it, to have it out there, but for the May meeting. That's okay.
Okay.
We gave kudos to the chief. You did a great job on the budget too. Thank you.
I sound boring. It was his numbers. He had pictures. So.
Well, hold on. We'll close out this work session. All questions asked and answered.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you're good, Roberto?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's move on.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion, I'll vote for. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Good night.